like, you can do drums as well. Fresh. And so yeah, just like really dove down the rabbit hole from there.
So you found by you being a break dancer and some guy kicking you being like we don't have anything, we're gonna go and make a beat for you to go and dance to. That's when you actually had a label being like, what is that called? It wasn't just going on.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's when I had a name for beatboxing. And then from there I was just like obsessed, man. Like anything that I knew had beatboxing on it. It wasn't like today where the internet is such a huge resource. Back then there wasn't like heaps of clips on the internet. There wasn't like Swiss Beatbox, there wasn't Beatbox Battle TV, there wasn't like all these different resources to go to and just see the world's best right in front of your eyes. You like had to dig, hear about a little snippet of someone beatboxing on a video, and you find that, and you learn that routine, and then you start again, like trying to find the next thing. It was fun, man. It was such a exciting kind of journey. It wasn't like just bang, there it is. It was hard to learn. Not hard to learn the techniques. It was hard to learn because it was hard to find the little nuggets of gold that you kind of had to dig for.
The samples to work forward from. Absolutely. I feel that because I remember Kazaa, Napster, all these different download programs that just fried your computer as soon as you used it once. But you could go and find like, oh my God, I can find the 4 Elements by Rozelle. And if you downloaded that, it's going to take you a few days, and hopefully no one picks up the phone, and then you're going to just have to start the whole process over again. But finding those little samples to work off of, where it was a very large digging experience, as you said, kind of like crate digging, but like you're sitting there being like, where can I find that little tiny clip that someone has in a song,
Yeah, totally, man.
It's crazy. And when you were starting too, as you were progressing more and more, because you said that when you started with your drawings, have you always been a visual person? Like before you did graffiti, were you doing drawings and doodles that you were relatively good at? Because as it seems now, and I can see it, a lot of your videos that you do and a lot of your own promotion is hand drawn by yourself and stuff that you have done like that. And were you an artist before that? Before you saw graffiti, were you relatively well at actually drawing stuff beforehand?
Yeah, man. I definitely did it a lot. Like it was shithouse because I was a kid, but like it was something that I did a lot. So it was just another kind of like hyperactive outlet for me. Scribble on everything, man. Like literally every piece of blank paper in the house had drawings and little kind of brain farts on it. And yeah, man, like it was just finding hip hop was like this perfect thing, like a perfect little home for a hyperactive person, because so many of the elements in hip hop, you didn't really need that much money or equipment. Like outside of DJing, like b-boying, you could break anywhere there was a nice surf. Beatboxing, you could do it anywhere. Like you probably shouldn't do it anywhere, but you could. And like graffiti, you just need a pen, and you can kind of like gain notoriety from just one single little marker and just dedication. So it was a really kind of, for me, I was so drawn to the accessible it was for expression, and like, how easy it was that you could gravitate towards these things because you didn't need thousands of dollars to kind of buy golf clubs or, tennis rackets and, coaching. You could do it all yourself. So yeah, I think I really just dived in, man, and just put everything else to the side.
And that was basically, so during high school is when you started out. You said around 16 is when you first started really pursuing this stuff. But that's a time too. You're absolutely right. Like in Canada, not everybody can go and play hockey because hockey equipment's expensive, ice time's expensive. Being able to go and make it to practices and doing all these things, it makes it hard to go and make it accessible for everybody. But hip hop in general is meant and is allowed and encouraged just to be done everywhere, anytime, and anybody from any walk of life can go and have that experience. So I agree with you that, like, yeah, beatboxing specifically is the most portable free drum and producer software that you could ever have, but it's hardware into your mouth. So it's cool that you actually really started pursuing it, because I wouldn't be having this conversation if you hadn't. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. And one of the other things, man, that I found like super dope, you know, like say, for example, if you want to study violin, violins are expensive. Lessons, you know, you have to go to, you have to like pass certain things. And then if you want to play professionally, there's only so many spots in a lot of the professional orchestras in whatever town you're in. Like, you know, it to me, that kind of rigid structures of learning, and it took me, because I didn't have so many thousands of dollars for an instrument. Like, I wanted to learn at my own pace and do my own thing. And the thing is, like with the voice, think about how many different styles of beatboxing there are. There's like, you know, it's not just, you don't just learn to beatbox and you get a certain set of tonality that you have to run with, and that's what you always employ in whatever composition you create. It's literally limitless. So that's another reason why I was so like excited about it, because I'd meet someone that had a totally different set of sounds to what I did, and it just like kept blowing my mind over and over and over and over. So it was cool, man. It was a very like formative and replenishing experience, I think, like the musical journey through that.
Do you find that relatively, I assume we're about the same age, and you feel like the older generation of beatboxers and the guys before us especially, but style was something that was always harped on like the hardest, where it back that hip hop mentality of like, don't bite people's stuff, don't do this, don't do that. And I feel like as it's moved forward, there's a lot of people that have that access to the internet, which is great for learning and great to go and mimic the greats of today and the greats from yesteryear. And you have that availability to always be able to go and be like, right away, how do you do that? Now there's a tutorial, now there's this. But I feel like originality is being pushed by a lot of people, but there's a good portion that sits on the internet that just learns everybody else's little things, and they have a hard time really finding their own style because there's so much available to them. And I was going to ask, how do you stay original? Because there's a lot of the stuff that you do that's the first time I ever heard someone do that sound or do that way, or make it some of your layered tracks that you started off early on where you were putting it in there. I'm like, wow, the production on this is amazing, and he's actually really pushing it forward with his own original ideas. So for the generation that is currently going and generations to come and stuff, what are your recommendations on keeping original?
Well, I think the reason that I managed to, I don't want to say set myself apart, but like at least have a few points of difference, is because Australia's internet's so bad, you just can't get online. No, but in all seriousness, man, like having that drive to create new stuff is what sets people apart. You know, it's I don't want to say it's easy to go online and learn new techniques, but someone's already come up with those techniques, you know what I mean? The hardest thing is not learning the sounds, it's creating the sounds, like finding new ways to do things I've learned. If you just stick to the like basic repertoire of what most people are trying to learn at the moment, you're not going to have something that makes you shine in a battle or makes you stand out or make people, you know, like there's people like, you know, like the D-Lows and like people that come through, or Napalm when he, you know, 2015 world champs, like there's people that kind of like set new benchmarks and they really stand out because they do bring something fresh and like reinvigorating to the table. So I think I wouldn't have any tips. Like it's either you want to do your thing, or you're just happy with becoming pretty good. I think you have to really like set your mind to like wanting to create and wanting to push boundaries and wanting to innovate. And I think that's what's always like driven me forward, man, is not competing, not trying to be better at other people, but just like finding my own lane and going at my own speed. You know what I mean? Like there's no way I could compete professionally in battles anymore, and I don't really want to. It's not what like fires me up creatively. I think it's fun for me to just like find what everyone else is not doing and then focus on that, because then you can just like relax, man. You can just, you know, pump the brakes, and you can really dive into the intricate details of things without having to worry about like, this guy's doing that faster, or he can do it up an octave. You're just like, hey man, I'm just sitting out here in my little studio in Australia and just being super weird. So that's kind of what drives me forward in terms of creativity and trying to stay fresh and original with ideas.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always been that case, as you said, with Napon when at the World Champs dropping the way that he did lip rolls, because lip rolls have been around for a long while. And I remember even watching Kim, he put out on his story, I think 2 days ago, but it was just little clips of some of the first lip rolls. And he was talking about an old Italian beatboxer and this guy, just showing little clips from performances, but they weren't done the way that Napalm took that and originated it kind of his way and taking a sound. So again, it's funny to see the roots of where sounds come from and how people have skewed them slightly differently. And in a lot of interviews, you talk about your siren and how if you change it slightly, then you end up with a trumpet. And if you do it backwards, you end up with the guitar sound, and you do this and do that. But exploring sounds is something that I found that you specifically shine in, is taking a sound and seeing how many different ways you can go and do it, and just continuously pushing that one sound, you know? Mm-hmm. And is there at the time when you first learned the siren, let's say, is there kind of like a thought process behind how you're going to go and try to achieve different sounds with it, or is it just playing around with it and seeing what comes out?
Yeah, man. So like, if I find a sound that I'm relatively happy with, I'm like, okay, cool, I've got that. Now, how many different ways can I warp the sound? Like, how much extra texture can I get on this? Like, how can I create layers in ways that you wouldn't think that there'd be, like, for example, with like certain throat-based techniques. Like I got it as low as I could, and then I was like, okay, damn, how can I like make it grittier? How can I like change the timbre of it and make it like more dirtier and stuff like that? So I always find something like a fundamental sound, like a throat bass, like a but then if I like go like, oh, maybe if I closed my my larynx a little bit and put more spit through it, you could make it grittier, like, you know, like just finding different ways to warp sounds to keep inventing, because you're already halfway there. You've already got half of the sound, so you may as well just keep going on that kind of experimental journey. So I really like finding one thing and then just refining it. It's just an ingredient, basically.
Yeah, and I take it that's something that you still play with. Obviously, is you often say stuff about the resonance and how you can go and open up your mouth in a certain way to go and get that to go and sound like more. The more air availability to go out can be able to control how it's going to sound coming out, right? And mm-hmm. Are you? I assume you are. But is there any sounds that you're currently working on that you're like, I'm other than everything, obviously, but I'm saying, is there anything specifically that you're like, I wish I could do something like this?
Man, inward bass, dude, I just can't do it. Like, I'm trying, and like, it's funny, man. Like, people often expect, like, if you're in a limelight as a person that is considered to be quite known in your craft, people just assume that you've got an endless repertoire of techniques. And so I remember before I could do lip rolls, everyone was just like, lip roll tutorial. I'm like, I'm watching lip roll tutorials. Like, I can't give them. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'd try and learn just as much as everyone else. I was watching inwards bass tutorials the other day, just going like, I can't do it. I'm so used to doing inward sounds like a certain way that it's just taking me a little bit of time to relearn. So, because I know that there's like cool things that I could do with it once I've like cracked the nut, because I love doing inward stuff. Like the way vocoder does like so many different textures with a certain technique. You know that's the same way that I was talking about like finding things with the siren. You know, it started with like one little kernel of an idea, and then it's just grown into this thing with so many different branches. So that's like one thing that I'm like, damn it, one day I will get, but not quite yet. It's not at a point where I'm like, okay, I can show people this. It's a shame.
Upcoming showcase or video, we might be hearing some inward bass stuff, and I'll know it after you watch this interview, ladies and gentlemen. You'll sit at home and be like, I remember when he said he was working on it.
Yeah, exactly. If I throw up, I haven't succeeded. But yeah, man, like I was like sitting down by the river the other day, just like there in my zone, like watching something and going, okay, so are they inwards? Like okay, no, okay. And just, man, to anybody like cruising past on their boat, they would have just been like, there's the crazy guy again.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, like, yeah, I think inwards bass. I don't know how I'd, because a lot of the sounds I really focus on is layered stuff. Like when I was talking about resonance, you can change different resonances to make it sound better layered, like thinner sounds top, more fuller sounds at the bottom of your stack. So like that's something that I really like focus on when I'm layering stuff up, is like the actual thickness of the frequency spectrum. So it'd be like some of those inward sounds, especially the ones that Vocoder was doing. Like I judged some of his rounds for the OSB battles recently. There's just so many like textures in it. It just, you're like, how could you layer that? It's already so thick. It's a big thick boy.
Big thick boy.
Daddy.
Well, if there's if there's someone that can do it, I got faith in you that you could be able to figure out how to go and use that in such a way that you could create it and maybe take it a different way as you have.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally, man. Totally.
And sounds are crazy, man. And I remember as you just said it a little while ago there, but you used to, before beatboxing, you used to draw your sounds. When you were drawing, you'd have sounds that you paired with the drawing, and you do from, you know, or whatever it is in little sounds that you're going with your drawing. And if you ever seen the Mark Martin TED Talk where he talks about, you know, kids playing with like little action figures or little things, and you're always making sounds as a kid. Most people do have that. And going forward in life, after being, obviously, you know, when you get a little bit older, I find there's so many people that have unique sounds. They're not a beatboxer, but they have unique little sounds that they do for stuff, whether it's just talking and in passing, they'll whistle a certain way, or they'll make a little bird noise, or they'll make a little thing like that. And it's wild to think that there's sounds out there that someone who's never, quote unquote, trained and put thought process behind of being like, how do I construct this sound? But they just, they started doing it as a kid, and they found this one thing to get someone to laugh, and they're like, okay, if I just keep running with it now, and it gets better and better and better and better. Yeah. And I was gonna ask, is there sounds like, have you heard sounds by people like this, and you've just been like mind blown that somebody can go and do a cricket a certain way, let's say, or like something a certain way? Has there ever been a time where you just kind of stood back and someone comes up to you as a beatboxer, which happens a lot, at being like, oh yeah, well, can you do this? And they just do this thing. You're like, no, I can't do that. And how'd you do that?
Yeah, dude, all the time, especially, you know, because I used to teach a lot of school workshops. And so as part of that, I would ask, is anyone that can do like any special sounds, or anyone that can do sound effects? And usually there'd be like 5 kids pointing to this one person. It always happens like that, where it's always like, Timmy over there, he's got this. And man, some of the strange sounds, because kids obviously have got like higher vocal range than us already. So there's just so many crazy things, like little sonar noises and things that you're just like, huh? You know, like, you're like, what? Just like, because it's funny, like having your mind blown as a beatboxer by a 7-year-old at Yeronga State School or whatever, you know. It's like, it's really cool. And it happens a lot, man.
Yeah, no, I go to schools a lot as well. It's sometimes as you get it right on. Everyone points at the kid and be like, go and show them. Or after an assembly, a kid kind of gets walked up by a teacher and it's just like, you know, hey, this guy or this girl, she has a sound that she wants to show you. And you're kind of like, always, obviously, you know, like, oh yeah, let me hear it. And then when it comes out, just, whoa, what? How is this possible? And it's not something that's trained. But I feel like sound making and beatboxing and stuff is very natural, and it's been around for pretty much ever. Because before there was speaking, you know, you were grunting or making little, you know, as people became humans or whatever, there was that time where people just make sounds to go and describe things, whether it's emotion or trying to go and say that warning, warning, someone's coming, or, you know, nothing quite as funny as a fart sound. So it's just being able to have those sounds, no matter how much, best comedian in the world still gets trumped every single time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, like, we've got vocal cords, obviously. There's a reason that, you know, we've been designed like this, is to be able to vocalize things. So, and, you know, you think about like parrots, for example, like African gray parrots, it's learned behavior. Like, learning these sounds is learned behavior. You know, you're not a lyrebird, and you're not born with an incredible repertoire of man-made mechanical noises. You just learn them. Totally a possible feat. People always come up to me and they're like, oh, there's no way I could beatbox. Oh, how do you do it? You got like 5 vocal cords in there. You're like, no, dude, I just spent thousands and thousands of hours on it. Like, I was terrible when I started. Like, it's crazy, man. I bet you get asked it too. Like, so when did you figure out you could do that? It's
yeah,
like,
is it something that you're just born with? Is it something you're born with, or, you know, there's no way in this, you know, this, yeah, that stuff always makes me laugh. Or when Roselle, when it was the If Your Mother Only Knew, when that first came out, the amount of people that were trying to tell me you can't do that because he's born with 2 vocal cords, and they were like convinced in the circle. I'm sitting there, I'm like, pretty sure if I just listened to it a bunch of times, I'm not gonna be able to do it like him. I'll do it my own way a little bit, but like, give me a little bit of time. And that, it was just funny how convinced these people were, being like, no, he's like, you gotta look at him, like, look at his throat. He has got 2 vocal cords that are coming down, and like,
yeah,
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, even if he did have 2 vocal cords, he's only got 1 set of lips. It'd have to come out the same way anyway.
Yeah, it'd be. I'd like to see that, though. It'd be amazing to have somebody that has that availability. Be interesting to see. We'll see how life goes. Maybe there'll be a beatboxer that's just the chosen one that comes along
with 2 sets of mouths.
2 sets of mouths.
I can think of way better careers. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, professional eater. You just crush it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say too. I want to get into your beatbox career a little bit. The first time you were on stage that you've said is at the Maruka Festival, when a CD player stopped and a member of your breakdance crew said jump on because you need to go and fill the time and add a beat to it, and there needs to be not dead air. Is that true?
Yeah. From like a long time ago. So from what I can remember is that like the CD wasn't working for our showcase, and some like the MC was just asking if anyone knew any jokes, and then like the dudes are like, oh, hey man, go and do your beatbox, man, go and do your beatbox, and then just kind of went up there and did something super whack probably. But at the time, you know, everyone was like, wow, that's really cool. When did you figure out you could do that? So yeah, I think that was the first time on stage from what I can remember.
And because 2005, you go to the World Champs, you're with Joel Turner, you get into the finals of the tag team as Attention Deficit, and you win the World Champs with Joel Turner. And then you also, in the solo version, you battled Roxy Loops and got knocked out of the tournament, but you still made it into that top echelon in the quarterfinals of it. And I was gonna ask, what were you doing before then, show wise? Because it said after that, about 2 years out of school, you said that you started touring with Joel Turner as one of the original tours that you were on. But what type of shows were you doing before that? Because I've scoured the internet, and that is all I could find as a beginning point from 2005. So it means about 2 years before that.
Yeah, so I don't even know, man. I think I was like, I don't know if I was doing many shows, to be honest, bro. Like, I think I was just kind of kicking around in my bedroom. I think like there was like a bunch of local battles, maybe. Like the first time I met Joel Turner was on a train bridge. Like I'd heard about him, he'd heard about me, so we organized to meet up after school on this overpass and kind of like have a battle. And you know, like because he was the only other beatboxer that I'd heard. Like in my kind of vicinity, like on my side of town. So I was like, oh man, I got to meet this guy. And he burned me. It was crazy. But then I was like, whoa, this is dope. There's like another guy and then it was cool because he had a totally different repertoire of sounds, like I'd never heard this stuff. It was like before everyone put heaps of stuff on the internet. It was like, I met this guy and I was like, wow, how do you do that? And he like, the flow of information was two ways. It was a really kind of cool experience having your mind blown by something so close to home. So, yeah, I don't, man, in terms of shows, like, I think I auditioned to go on tour with Joel, and he was kind of blowing up at the time with like a bunch of like commercial success in Australia, like releases. So yep. I was just part of the band. Don't know what part, but I was there.
You were there?
Yeah.
And that was that was before you guys went to the World Champs, that you met him on a bridge and started practicing / going after meeting doing the audition and moving forward with him is when you went on tour. And how'd that tour look like? It was just you and him together, or you doing a solo and him doing a solo, or combining, or were you just in the background as songs were going on, kind of adding your flair to them?
Bit of both, man. Yeah, there was moments where everyone got to solo, like Hopi One was there as well.
Yep.
And a whole bunch of other beatboxers from Brisbane, but a whole bunch of like Islander boys that were incredible musicians as well. Like, so it was really fun, man. It was a really nice formative experience. I was mad young, so I was just like, things like I look back on that era and I just cringe at myself. But it was really good. Like it was crazy to kind of get that national touring experience almost straight out the gate, you know what I mean? And then things just like after that slowed down like crazy, and I just kind of lost in the ether of wondering what I'm going to do with myself. But things have worked out up until right now.
Yeah, we'll get into that though. I got some questions about your current state of how you're doing. But when you went, how did you guys find out about the World Championships 2005? What was it that drew you to it? Did you just find it on a forum? Did people, send you an email with it on it? Or was it something that you just like kind of had your ear to the ground and heard about it? And then how did you enter it? Like, what was the contact with Bilo? What was the story behind you guys getting on a plane from Australia to fly to Germany and end up winning together, and also him winning the solo? What was that story for Australia's 2005 kind of takeover of the World Champs?
Man, what a question. Okay. I must have had something on the internet. There must have been something. There was like a guy that used to own humanbeatbox.com, A+.
Oh, A+, yes. Shout out to A+.
Yeah, like back in the day. And he came over to Brisbane for a wedding or something, and I linked up with him, and he shot like a video of me that was like, or someone shot a video of me at this beatbox jam, and it was like shot on the side. I had this huge blonde afro, like it's the worst thing ever, and I hope no one ever sees it. But
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't really know, man. I know that Bilo emailed me. I don't know how he had heard of me, because, at that time, like, I was just an Australian kid. Like, I wasn't doing anything cool. Maybe it was like, maybe I had done something with Joel at that point, or got on TV, or I can't really remember. But Bilo emailed me, and then I think I asked him if Joel could come as well. So we just kind of both went to Germany. And I had this friend at the time that was only 2 years older than me, but had like totally smashed it in IT development. He was like a 22-year-old multi-millionaire. And he was like, yeah, I'll fly you guys to Germany. You want to go to Germany? All right, let's go to Germany. Just flew us both there.
And
it was crazy.
Is that guy coming back years later being like, so I invested in you, I'm expecting something on him.
Nice. You guys have to win. But anyways.
That's a clever twist on the end of that story.
Yeah. No, he's not anymore. He's actually a really nice guy, but he's one of the kind of guys that will always be rich, just always thinking of the next thing.
Well, it's definitely a plus that he flew you over.
Yeah, man, and I'm super grateful for that because, like, there's no way that I would have been able to afford a trip to Germany when I was kind of like that young. Like the plane trip now, I can't afford a plane trip to Germany. Like, let alone when I'm a grommet, like straight out of high school, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing that I find just international battles. They're hard for like this. The hub of them has become Europe for the major battles that happen. And even in Canada, like Canada's a pretty big country. So when we have the Canadian champs in Toronto, I feel bad for guys like, you know, Vino and Cymax and another guy, like other guys coming from Montreal, just people that have to fly in, you know. And it's always just being like, you know, we're not at a point in the beatbox world where an air company, a flight company has stepped up and said, okay, you know, we'll sponsor your event, and not even just money, but we'll be able to go and get all your battlers to the event or judges to the event. That's something that I would love to see one day, because it just make it more accessible for these people to get the opportunity. Because if somebody's sitting out there, an Australian kid that didn't have somehow mega millionaire friend all of a sudden to fly him there, you might never have had that experience to go with Joel and end up winning for Australia the tag teams and him winning the solos. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was pretty like mental. And that was also like the first moment, because up until that point I was just doing it, just kind of fucking around with it and not really like taking it seriously. You know what I mean? Like I was just kind of like, oh, I'm a b-boy and a graph writer, and I can beatbox as well, and you know, like, let me show you some of my beatbox kind of thing. Like I wasn't calling myself a professional beatboxer, but you know, after you win the world champs of something, you kind of go like, oh shit, that's pretty cool. Maybe I'm not terrible at this. And then I just kind of got back home. I think we both did, with like a more reinvigorated sense of self-worth and like purpose. So it was cool, man. It was a very great experience. And also going to Germany for the first time and like seeing how hip hop everyone there was. Like, it was like the spray cans were like €3, man. And in Australia, they were $13. Like the same thing. Like, if you're doing a whole piece with $13 spray cans, you had to be a rich guy, man. You know that someone's mum was buying those spray cans for them. But like over in Europe, I was like, I can afford two. Like,
this is just gonna be a one color throw up. I actually have two colors to go and show.
Yeah. So it was really cool, man. Like, and then I saw like Master Ace play there, and I saw Killer Keller perform, which is huge for me as well. Like, met Kid Lucky. Yeah, it was cool, man. And like, actually at that event, Kid Lucky was like, came up to me. He's like, hey man, like, you know, battling isn't the only thing, you know, there's other things, like there's shows, and, you know, you can be an artist as well. You can like focus on other parts. And that sentiment really like stuck with me over the next couple of years. And I realized that I didn't actually like battling. I like watching it, but for me, I kind of like taking my time with stuff, and I just get stage fright and scared. I just want to crawl into a fetal position and wee myself in battles. So I'm glad that I've taken a back seat on that. And I'm glad that, you know, I spoke to Terry at that very formative time, and he kind of like went, hey, there's different paths. This isn't the only option to becoming recognized for what you do. So it was cool. It was a really dope experience, man. Like, I can't imagine what I would have been like, or what I'd be like today if I hadn't had that experience.
And is that because you said that you were touring around with other beatboxers from Australia at the time as well. Before that, and actually, excuse me, when going to the World Champs, was that like one of the first times you met such an array from different countries and had that knowledge that there was a lot of people doing something similar to you? Yeah,
man, totally. Like, because up until that point, you only really heard about the guys that were like really doing it, like Killer Keller, Razel. There was a few other names that were like in there as well. But that was the first time that I met other people that were like hungry like me. Like, you know, I think I met Hobbs there. Hobbit was there. I think some of the French guys were there. I met Skiller there.
Hmm.
Yeah, like it was crazy, man. It was awesome, dude. Like such a great experience to just be around different countries, different languages, but all just the same kind of like, like tweaky little hyperactive people that were just trying to like. Oh, Butterscotch was there as well. She's like crushing it now. Like it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
really dope, man.
Yeah, that event was I watched it again. I watched it like not obviously not live, but I remember finding it on YouTube when I was starting up too, and I was like, oh, I wish I would have known. I would have tried to like somehow get there. But we had a guy named Poisonous.
Yeah, he was there. Poisonous,
Yeah,
and he
he got
came
pretty
over with
far.
Peach. Yeah, I
Yeah,
battled Poisonous at Scribble Jam in
yeah, it was good. That's
2006.
therein lies the tie into the story.
Yeah.
But a good friend Poisonous, man, he's a Canadian guy and he represented very well in the world champs, got into that top echelon. And so 2006 Scribble Jam. So after you do the battle in 2005, you go back to Australia. How did you find out about Scribble Jam and you got to the finals versus DJ Snuggles? You ended up unfortunately not winning that, but watching it back, you could see the difference in the way you, I don't know, I watched that battle back the other like couple days ago when I was going through some of your history just to go and make sure I kind of found it. But you had I don't know, you had that flair to you, and it was funny to me that at certain points you're like, all right, this is the last trick I'm going to do, like last party trick, and then you get into actual beats, but there was points where you're trying to like break dance and beatbox at the same time and keep that forward. But how did you find out? Because Scribble Jam used to be that thing where it's like you have the MC battles, you have the graffiti going on, you have breaking battles, you have beatbox battles, you have DJ battles. And 2008, when I went there, they even had video production battles where they had videos go on at the end of the night, where it's just like this guy's video for his thing, this guy's video for his thing. This is this, keep on going. So Scribble Jam was a staple, and I'm sad that it went away 2008. But how did you find out about it, and how did you get over there after coming back from the world champs a year later?
Yeah, good question, man. I knew about it from just like being deep in the hip hop scene. Like I'm pretty sure Eminem battled there back in the day as well. Like
Versus
it was,
Juice, yeah.
yeah, it was like a real like mainstay of hip hop competition. So an Aussie guy actually the year before in 2005, a guy called Justice or Chaos. It was. I'm pretty sure it was Justice. He went over and won the freestyle battles. Another Aussie, and like that's the same year that Joel and I had went and gone over to Germany and won. So I was like, oh man, like if he can do it, surely I can go back there and at least make a dent. Like represent. And I think there was like a bunch of like gigs, hip hop gigs, and people literally were just like passing around a hat and putting spare change in it to like get my flight over to the States. And yeah. Can't remember what gig it was, but someone just put on a fundraiser to like get some cheddar to fly me over to the US. And it was really cool, man. I went over there with a bunch of other hip hop heads like Cancel, who's a DJ from Adelaide, and Purpose, who's an MC from Adelaide. So yeah, we just went over there, man. It was like my first time to the States. Like going to the Mecca of hip hop. It wasn't New York, but it was still like one of the most prestigious kind of hip hop competitions. So I got stuck in an elevator with Big Daddy Kane, and I was just like, it was crazy, man. Like I was just like a kid in a candy store, So
yeah, and
I really had a great time.
And I take it that whilst you were there, because you were again a multifaceted artist. It wasn't just a beatboxer, and I feel like there's a lot of people that when starting hip hop, they'd always try their hands at other things, and some people were good at them. Some people, like myself, I realized, okay, I'm doing all right with the beatboxing, and I'm not gonna go and try to pursue how to go and I'm terrible. I can barely write like properly, being legible. So I'm like, I don't think being a graffiti artist is gonna really go down too well. And breakdancer, you got to be in real good shape and spend more time practicing that. But it's being multifaceted like that and going to Scribble Jam must have been like whoa, you can go and get in the cipher when it's going to be going down for rapping, and then you can go and jump over here into a breakdance cipher, and then you can go and throw some stuff up on the walls as people are doing it. And that must have been like just the epitome of cultural arousedness, you know, being aroused.
Dude.
Like,
man, hard. I like spread myself so thick there. Like I would have been so annoying. Just like every cipher I was there throwing down. Every blank wall space. They had a store that you could buy paint from and go and paint the barriers there. So like I was just annoying, man. I sincerely apologize to anybody that I met there. I was just like fanging around like some like 21-year-old crackhead just going like, hey man, sign my black book. Oh, like MCs that I loved were just there sitting on picnic tables selling mixtapes and stuff. And I was just like, it was crazy. That was another like gnarly hip hop experience for me.
It's funny because if you look into now Grand Beatbox Battle nowadays and there's large beatbox battles, that same experience that you went through there in Scribble Jam of walking around and seeing your favorite battle MCs, seeing MCs that you're like, whoa, you're just here, or seeing break dancers there, or writers that you've might have seen pictures of their work beforehand. But if you look forward or looking into where we are now with beatbox battles, you're Tom, and you're just walking around, and people can come up to you, and you know, I'm not encouraging people to go and touch you, but I'm saying that they can walk up and be like, whoa, he's right here. I can go and talk to him, and he'll spend time actually being a human and talking to me. And I feel like that Scribble Jam experience for myself too, like when I was there in 2008, you know, obviously the Source, he ended up winning his the rap battle side of things. And I took the W on the beatbox, but we were sitting there, and it was just a crazy experience for people that I've watched in grind time and people that I was watching in these battles, and then seeing them there live on stage. And then afterwards, there's just ciphers that were happening all over the place that have like a little boombox, and just being able to kick a beat for these guys to rap over, and just sitting there like trying to smile yourself and be like, keep calm, these are the guys. And that availability is something that I've always loved about beatbox events and hip hop events in general, when they're that kind of family vibe. And it's real cool. It must have been like such a sick experience to be able to walk right into ciphers and just be like, as you said, 21 years old, just full of gumption, going around being like, okay, what else can I go and get into? What else can I go and get into? You know?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was so dope, dude. And like, I was like totally a no one there. I was just like some kid kicking around, like entering the battles. Like at that point, I hadn't had a 10-year career or anything. I was just like, you know, fresh out of some like middle of nowhere in Australia. Like, so it was really dope, man. Like that was another experience that I just like chalk up to formative kind of things that happened to me when I was younger.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I don't know. The progression is crazy, man. Just to see being like, okay, you went world champs, and then you went to, you're such, hip hop head, basically getting right in there in Scribble Jam, getting around. And then you come back from that, and I see you started doing shows with the guy, Sampology. So you started doing shows, places like the Powerhouse in Brisbane, the Zoo, and the Valley Fiesta. And you started working on this set with him where you were looping stuff, and he was playing over top of it with live MPC and scratching on top of the stuff that you were working with. Now, I wanted to know, because the earliest covers I could find of you doing loopstation work, aside from Tommy Illfigga stuff that I'll get into later, but the loopstation specifically was you doing like Tainted Love cover at the Blah 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 Festival, or working with your Chaos pads on the Bluesy Freestyle to go and work on it. And I was going to wonder, how did you get into looping? Was there somebody that you saw? Because that's just you're obviously, that's one of your main things now, is your tool being the RC505 and other hardware pieces that you pair with it. But what got you into looping specifically live and doing shows with like Sampology and doing shows where you were actually working with a loop station live and not just sitting there making something to go and rap on afterwards or use afterwards in production, but being able to do it live? Was there someone that inspired you to go and do that?
Yeah, so I mean, the loop station stuff, I toured in a company called the Tom Thum Crew,
I was going to get to that.
Which was a circus kind of company, contemporary circus. I can't remember who I first saw on a loop station, but I had one of those shitty little RC30s, like a red loop thing, and I was doing like covers of Knight Rider and and it was terrible, so bad. But I started realizing that it was like you didn't have to be as technical as a beatboxer. Like you could be a technical musician, but you could be more measured about your approach to building routines. Like you could be very selective about the layers you wanted to use, and then you could present something over the top of it, which really appealed to me. Like I think around the time that I started looping is when I decided that I didn't really want to battle. I didn't want to be a solo beatboxer, like a technical solo powerhouse, you know what I mean? I was just like, oh, I like the vibe of this. Like I like experimenting with how different layers interact with each other. And I think I can't remember who I saw first on a loop station. I think it was a guy called Morganix, who was like one of the pioneers in Australia, used to do stuff on a loop station. But I started doing stuff with Sammy with Sampology, where I'd just kick a beat and then we'd go back and forth on scratches. And then eventually the layers would become thicker and thicker and thicker. And then I think the first person I saw really smash it on a loop station was Beardy Man. I think one of the UK champs, he just did a thing on 2 or 3 Chaos pads, and it was super sick. I was like, I want to do that. And so, yeah, I think that was kind of my journey into looping. But to be honest, man, I don't actually loop that much. I do use it a lot at home, but I think I'm so meticulously focused on not screwing something up that if you make a mistake in the loop station, it just keeps coming back. It's like, oh God, here it is. So I'm really hesitant to use it. So anytime that I perform with a loop station, it's usually under my very strict guidelines of being able to control my surroundings. I'm not like Saro, who could rock an hour set of super dope music on a loop station. I'd prefer to integrate other facets, like guests and other things like that. So I definitely wouldn't say that I'm a virtuosic loop station technician. I just like the fact that you can use it to really explore layers and how the voice interacts and that kind of stuff, like harmony and melody and song structure, as opposed to just going, I'm going to crush it right now and just just take this one element, which is my voice, and turn it into this sonic brick wall of incredibleness. So yeah, it's just a different approach, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can see in your new album that you put out there and stuff like Ratchet Face and the way that you produce stuff now is at such a high quality, and that's something that you've said in many interviews, is just that you have probably, I don't even know how many hundreds or thousands of pieces that the average person might be like, wow, I'd really like to hear that, or they really want to go and see it or hear something like that. But the quality control is at such a level where you're just so stressed about even putting out something that you can hear that one little thing. You hear tiny little thing that'll be there forever, that you're going to be able to hear and just be driving you a little bit crazy hearing that thing, and being, maybe you're the only person that'll hear it, but it's the quality control is at such a high level, man. So you've always been putting out good quality stuff from anything.
Sometimes though, it's definitely a problem, because some of the best music is riddled with technically. But I wasn't even going to put out the Ratchet Face EP. It had been sitting on a hard drive for 3 years, and I think I showed MB14 at SBX camp, and he was like, "Bro, you crazy? What? Why haven't you put this out?" I was like, "Oh no, it's too old. I don't like it. No, it's terrible. The songs are old, they're dated." He's like, "No one's heard it." It's like,
yeah. over listening and over analyzing, but that's
Oh,
again.
dude. And because I do like with that EP, I was fortunate enough to work with a bloke, Cam Bluff, but everything else I do myself. And so I hear a song like thousands of times, man. Like I'm literally like dialing into frequencies on hi-hats for hours and stuff like that, you know. So by the time you finished an album, I often don't want to ever hear it ever again. And so I think it's just a delicate balance between being self-sufficient and self-deficient. So it's a tightrope.
I like that. And speaking of the Tom Thum crew, so you joined up with them in about 2007, is what I heard from the Sydney Morning Herald that told me this. And you traveled the world with this acrobatic live percussion hip hop show. And I want to know, how did you get involved with them specifically? Was it another tryout or something? They were having auditions that you went for, or did you hear about it from friends? Because from that, you were able to travel the world, and I saw you were doing shows in Colombia, 11,000 seat theaters, like you said, in Colombia, and you were doing shows from Asian countries to U.S. to Germany, where Kid Lucky actually was there, and he did an interview afterwards that was translated through German, but when I was listening to the interview, I had to listen real hard to hear the English that he was saying, and he was sitting there being like, yeah, man, they're fresh, they're fresh, they're doing this original thing. So it's funny that you met him, or mentioned that he was saying pursue other stuff moving forward. He goes and sees your show live in Germany with the Tom Thum crew. But I wanted to know, how did that get you, because you'd already traveled and done a tour with Joel, and you had that experience as a touring artist already, but moving into 2007 era where you started with the Tom Thum crew, heavily traveling, heavily touring. So how was that experience for you to go and get your footings as a performer, being able to do your solo set, being able to break dance, being able to go and add to it, to the musical outlay of the show? So how, I find that a lot of people don't have that opportunity, or don't pursue that opportunity, or don't work hard enough to go and be like, okay, I need to go and get on tour, because you can be great. You can be great in your room practicing something and virtuosistic, being amazing at it, but being able to have that live repetition of going and doing shows and shows and shows and shows and shows and seeing how to play with an audience. So as a younger beatboxer starting around there with Tom Thum crew, how did you get involved with them, and what experience did you gain with that crew doing so many tours and shows and having that opportunity?
Yeah, cool. So I started with them at a freestyle gig, like at New Year's at a place called Woodford Folk Festival. It was just like this director, Scott Maidment. We'd all work with him on other stuff. I worked with him on this show that was so terrible. Oh my God. It was, if footage of that ever exists, I hope it just gets COVID. It was the worst, so bad. But anyways, he put together a whole bunch of people, acrobats, percussionist Ben Walsh, turntablist Diz One, just a whole bunch of weird things that kind of sort of worked together. And then we just freestyled a gig. It was like, okay, what do? You do this. Okay, what do you do? And you got to swing from that. Okay, well, I'll just make sure that I don't stand in front of that. And then that's on fire, and it's meant to be on fire. Okay. All right. It was just chaos, dude. Biggest, if Office Health and Safety had been at that gig, we never would work again. It was crazy. But we did this one freestyle gig, and it went really well. And because it was so chaotic and everyone was just doing what they were good at, whilst trying to avoid other people doing what they were good at. And so we just ended up there, and then we did 30 shows at Adelaide Fringe Festival. The show started off super rough, and by the end we had a polished show that we could tour internationally. And so it was great, man. Like you said, just repetition, learning what works, learning it's not even certain routines. It's certain nuances in routines, space between things, putting pauses. It really allowed me to chill out and enjoy my time on stage, rather than being I've got a minute that I'm going to prove that I'm, subjectively better than this guy at this exact moment in time. So it was really cool, because it gave me a really nice experience on how to work with crowds and how to just chill out and learn to appreciate silences in performances and things like that, how to stand on stage and effectively communicate with people. That was one of the first things that I had to learn, like going to Germany, getting there from like little grunky hip hop kid from Brisbane, like, oh, g'day, how you going? No, I just want to hear some hip hop. Like, yes, so I really likes the show, but the problem was that nobody could understand you because you are not speaking English. I'm like, what now? So one of the things was just being an effective performer, whether that's through verbal communication or through like, you know, performance wise, like getting what I wanted to get across as effectively and as entertaining as possible. So that was great, man. Just like smashing it. But it was also great to see how communicable my art form was between like anywhere that we went in the world. It wasn't a problem because it would just be like, you know, like people understand music in any language. So it was cool to just like flex.
It wasn't like you were trying to go in and have a song in English and then you're going to a country that doesn't speak English and you're like, why are they not responding? I don't understand. I'm saying the stuff that works real well at home, but they don't understand it. Beatboxing kind of transcends that. And speaking of, I was going to say, you have a part in that show that I saw many different little clips of the way it was done, but you had yourself as Tom Thum representing for the real hip hop versus your friend Tommy Illfigga, who is more drum and bass and electro style. I wanted to know who won most of those battles from the crowd's point of view. Would you push harder for Tom Thum or would you push harder for Tommy Illfigga? Was there a moment there where you had both of them going up and you'd be like, oh, this guy usually wins this battle as my two characters that I'm playing?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I think it differed. It differed like in the age group of the crowds. And I wasn't imaginative enough to change the name of Tommy Illfigga either, because I'd taken that on as my MC name and people just got really confused about everything. So, and I don't even think there was a like ending. I know people like, I used to do like a whole bunch of like, I can't even remember, dude. It's like that long ago, but I really enjoy doing that stuff, like incorporating theatrical elements into performances is like what I think that I can find like areas to go in, like in that kind of realm as well. Cause like I said, I like being able to just take my time and chill out and speak to crowds and play with it and do voices and be expressive in that way. I'm just not a battle powerhouse. So yeah, I don't know what was the crowd favorite, but it always changes, man. You know how you like sometimes you have like little bits in your routine. You're like, oh, this is the bit that kills, and then just sometimes it doesn't. Just gets a bit flaccid, and you're like, oh, need to pump that up with a bit of performance Viagra.
Absolutely. There's definitely spots that fall flat when you think they're going to go and be the successful part, and there's other stuff where you're like, all right, I'm just going to go and do this, and kind of all of a sudden everyone's with you and you're like, well, that was unexpected. Pleasant, but unexpected. And
actually, you know what, like that's one of the things that I really learned from spending a lot of time on stage is improvising and, you know, going with the flow a bit. Like the amount of times that I've made mistakes and screwed up, but found creative ways to get out of those mistakes, was something that I doubt I could have learned at performance school, or doubt I could have learned at home in a pair of gaming headphones. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely,
it was real world on stage experience was very valuable.
That's why when I find a lot of people that as a beatboxer or any craft, any art, they go out and they do street performing, let's say, and okay, you can still hear me without headphones. That's
I've had headphones on the whole time, and they're so heavy, and I just realized that my speakers were unmuted, so they were just like jewelry.
So they were just their fashion statements wise. All right, well, I appreciate that, but yeah, man, I find that like you can kind of tell when there's people that have had the street performing element to their life, or have performed a lot comparatively to somebody who's worked on routines and won't stray from it. Because I find that sometimes when I'm watching a performer, specifically in beatboxing, someone that gets into a good run of something, it can be a simple beat 4 on the floor, it could be something very simple, but everyone all of a sudden is with them, and they'll just continue that line of thought instead of being like, no, I do that for 8 bars, and then as soon as the 8 bar hits, I switch it to this drop. You know, I'm going to go and get to this thing because that's how I practiced it. But there's people that can go and ride that flow, and that's definitely a skill as a performer that kind of sets you to that next level of being able to go and run with it. And yeah, that's good that you got that experience, because leading forward into all the other shows that you end up doing, at a young age, you were given that opportunity to go and, or you earned that opportunity and made that opportunity for yourself to go and tour around the world and show beatboxing to everybody and learn along the way, for sure. And that's where you met Jamie McDowell as well, who was an acrobat, right, in that crew that you work with currently, music-wise.
Yeah. Like he was, I met him in London. We were performing at South Bank in London, and every single one of the acrobats was injured. Like, it was just a total clusterfuck, man. Everyone was just like broken, but the show had to go on. And so I remember doing one show. It was me, the drummer, Sampology was playing as the DJ, and my friend Leah, who was a B-girl, was in the show. And we just thrown together this like scrappy shit heap of performance, just kind of going like, okay, what do? You got any magic tricks? Oh, yeah. Oh, like, you know, like just kind of really scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
And so Jamie got flown in as a replacement acrobat. And like we toured like as just, you know, acrobat. I was beatboxing. He was playing a little bit of bass in the show. But in Berlin, I think in like 2012 or 11, we started sneaking out after the shows to go and play Berlin, and just getting really good response from just an acoustic guitar and a microphone. It was so simple. Like, Jamie's songwriting ability was really good, and it was really good for me because, man, up until that point, I hadn't really done a lot of stuff with solid accompaniment. You know, like, I didn't realize how bad my timing was until I had to keep time for someone else. You know, when you're like in a flow on stage, you can be like, shift up tempos, you can go anywhere, but you don't necessarily just have to groove along for ages unless you're playing with an ensemble or you're playing with someone else. And when I started playing with Jamie, man, oh my God, I'd get so many side eyes in the middle of performances. He'd be like, bro, slowing down. It's what? You're like, I was just musically illiterate. And from that point, I really went, okay, I need to become not just a beatboxer. I need to become a better musician. I need to pick apart my flaws, because going forward, I want to work with other people. I want to work in ensembles. I want to, you know, be collaborative. And being collaborative, often, you know, you need to keep time. You need to have knowledge of harmony. You need to have knowledge of melody, of songwriting, or stagecraft and things like that. So from that point, it was a formative kind of experience, was meeting Jay and realizing how shit I was at music.
And again, that practice and being able to go and do a show and then run out to do the open mics after the fact. That's something that like I've done that myself. Whenever, if you go somewhere and you're like, well, I can sit in a hotel room and do nothing, or I can go into this place that might have 4 people or might be, you know, 1,000 people. Not 1,000, there's never open mics with 1,000, but there could be a bar full of people and you go have a good time. And it's great that you got that practice in to go and move forward with your timing and have that self-realization of like, yeah, maybe I should work with a metronome. Maybe I should try to go and get down that I can actually keep this form. So I'm just not the center of it. You're going to be in the background of it, and then have your moments to come out and shine. And it's that exchange with an artist, you know, that collaborative process.
Totally. Yeah, man. And like, it was really good. It was shocking because up until that point, I thought I was like the maddest dude out. And then you get into a room with someone that can play their instrument and relies on you to keep time or like harmonize correctly. and you're just like, wow, I'm really bad at this. So it was good because it lit a bit of a fire underneath me to go like, okay, you know, get your shit together. Like, if you want to do this for a job, if you want to do this professionally, if you want to be a professional musician, you have to learn about these things. You have to be good at it. You can't just be like a one-trick pony, like be terrible at drumming and then just do a showcase.
Yes.
So it was good, man. I'm glad that I sucked at that point.
Every pro and starts off as an amateur, right? And that's that growing process, and it's great to see everybody. I don't know. I love seeing people succeed, and I love seeing people that put the time and effort into something. Because I forget who said it, but they were talking about that idea of follow your passion, and the guy's quote was, "Don't necessarily follow your passion, but follow your work ethic." So if you find something that you're good at, that's a good start. But if you're let's say a runner, right, and you want to be a professional runner, you might be okay at running, but if you don't train and figure out ways to go and improve yourself from that natural baseline of something that you just keep working at, okay, well, you're just going to be an okay runner. But if you want to get to that top echelon of something, you got to go and put the hours in and think outside the box. And for beatboxing, it'd be, okay, get your chops in with the Tom Thum crew, and then get your chops in even more as a collaborative artist with Jamie, and working with him to go and figure out, oh, I need to go and be that person to keep the time, and actually not going off beat and throwing him off totally, and the whole song goes to nothing.
Yeah, dude. Like, there'd be times where we'd make videos and I'd like start with a tempo, like I'd tap it out of my hand, and by the end it was just like like so bad. So it was good to figure that out, and I'm glad I did. And it kind of comes full circle, like with what we were talking about before, what you were saying with the runner example, like exactly the same thing for beatboxing. Like, we're talking about creativity and pushing forward and finding different ways to break away from the standard repertoire of noises that people are doing, just to keep creating and, you know, find your flaws and then just really polish them.
Absolutely, man. And speaking of fresh, I was going to say Born Fresh Records. Fresh Records. I want to talk a little bit about Tommy Illfigga, one of your previous AKAs, and still I'm going to ask you that afterwards, but 2007, your debut EP, the Unfiltered EP, with songs like Heavyweight, and then you had Walk a Mile that came out August 12th, 2011, Obesity Mixtape 2 that you had there that came out, and one of the things that I wanted to go and bring up is you put out with DJ Butcher, you guys founded Born Fresh Records because you guys wanted to put out Crate Creepers and couldn't find somebody to put it out, so you made a self-label for that, and you had friends that you helped that were coming to you being like, oh, you got a label, can I put it out my thing on this label, can I put my thing on this label? So how did that work out, and is it still something, is Born Fresh Records still out there being a thing and putting out music, or is that kind of slowed down, and or is it not being continued?
Well, I mean, I've still got the email address. To be honest, man, it's I wouldn't say there'll be anything else coming out on Born Fresh unless it's like one of my releases and a similar sort of thing happens where I just feel like I need a couple of logos in the bottom left corner to make it look legitimate. It really was just a timestamp of a really great time in kind of Australian hip hop, in not formative years, but the time where like you go to gigs and it would just be all your mates, and then all those mates would eventually just become the guys that would be on your albums, and then they'd make their own albums, and you just wanted to put something out under a similar banner. It really was just a logo on a CD. Like, we didn't have the means of, I mean, sure, we mixed a couple of the albums, we were recording people, but we certainly didn't have any budget or anything like that. So it was it was really just the whole misfits united under tiny little logo in the bottom left corner. But it was a great experience, man. Like, a lot of the people are still making music under different names and different guises, but yeah, I don't think I'm certainly not going to do any more compilation albums under Born Fresh Records. It's business and labels and KPIs and making connects in magazines. That's just not something I'm good at.
Fair enough. And Tommy Illfigga though, is that is that something that you're going to be putting out more stuff as? And could you kind of explain to the people that haven't heard or haven't dove into it to try to figure this out? But Tommy Illfigga was your MC name and just another kind of personality, I guess you have, and you put out a bunch of projects as a rapper, and they were good, man. I took the time to go and listen into some of them, and even some of the earlier stuff that you were doing, it actually had good flow to it. It had well thought out, structured verses and stuff. And your Walk a Mile track, I thoroughly enjoyed as just a listener, and that's something I would listen to again. But is there more? Is there space for you as Tom Thum to go and focus again back and use Tommy Illfigga to go and feature on tracks, or have yourself go back to that mindset possibly? Or is that something that's kind of, again, with Born Fresh, kind of gone off or molded into who you are currently today, because you can drop lyrics and you sing, but you still have stuff that's original to yourself? So as Tommy Illfigga, you learned the pen game and being able to write lyrics, but is that something that you'd go back to and maybe visit in the future?
Look, I don't think I'll do any more like releases under Tommy Ill. It really was just time where I was just like deep in hip hop, and I just wanted to do everything. I wanted to be that guy that could do everything, and I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. But a lot of it's gonna sound whack, but a lot of the stuff I was saying was just kind of vacuous punchlines, you know, just flowing because I could. Like, I felt like I like, don't get me wrong, I really love it, and hip hop is dope, and I still MC on a bunch of stuff. I've been doing like features and things like that, but I felt like the stuff that I was saying wasn't important enough that I should take up space in a condensed scene, when there were definitely people with more important voices and more important things to say that mightn't get heard if there was too many people clogging the arteries of this kind of thing. Like in Australia, like hip hop was a very like graffiti writer thing, and it was mostly just white dudes, white guys. You know what I mean? And now there's like a lot of people that have got really important things to say that maybe wouldn't get heard if there was like a bunch of people that were just doing it because they like stringing words together in complex patterns. You know, maybe they're really important messages and things that people need to hear about mightn't have the space to really flourish. So I thought that I don't really want to like set my mindset to being that guy. Like, I don't want to be the head man. Like, I love spitting verses and I love kicking freestyles, like, you know, sitting around, but I don't think that I want to like have commercial success as an MC. I don't want to like invest all that time into it, because I didn't love everything outside of making the music, man. I loved making the music, but the other stuff, I've got a lot going on with my artistry as I know myself now. So I feel like to step back into those shoes, it would be a little bit dishonest to like and maybe it would be a bit too like transparent for listeners and stuff as well. Like, who wants to hear a fucking mid-30s guy talk about gardening, dude? Like that, like, if I was being a real MC 100% down the line, it would be songs about like, I fed the magpie some beef today. Oh, I bought some paper daisies and planted them in front of the studio so there was something nice to look at in spring. Like, that's not it. Yeah, like, man, there's like real issues that need to be addressed. And me going like, my murderous pen game, lyrical, you know, it's like,
miracle.
Yeah, in my heart of hearts, I like musicals, you know? Like, I'm not a hardcore dude, man. I felt like I was a little bit a little bit fraudulent in that kind of scene. So I thought, oh, I'll just take a back step while I'm on the good foot, and then
Yeah, and but something that I also found with that though is you put out area codes from the portfolio. STD charges may apply. And I wanted to go and ask you, because that was a track that you made layered beatbox on. You layered the track up and then you spat on top of it. So it was your beat that you spat on top of. And is that something that's like one of the first that I could find? That was about 9 years ago that you actually went and had something that sounded polished as a produced thing that you did, maybe in a studio, someone else's studio, working with them. But having that, being able to go and create something like that 9 years ago in about 2011, I think that's when it came out. And, or I'm terrible at math, but regardless, having that track that you worked on that sounded very polished and be able to rap on top of it. And then 5 years after that, you ended up working with R.A. the Rugged Man for Tom Thum off of Legends Never Die. And that wasn't a beat fully created by you, but you had a lot of parts in that and scratching and being able to go and add to the beat. So I was wondering that area codes kind of one of the first things that you fully had a beat that you created, and then moving forward to being able to work with someone like R.A. the Rugged Man, how did that opportunity come up, and how was the experience of being in, like, trying to make something with someone like that, of that echelon, and being able to go and work at that, from you're making a beat for yourself to rap on to R.A. the Rugged Man is rapping on your beats 5 years time? How did that happen? And
so that 2011 area codes, I think that was on an EP that I put out. I think it was like my Broken Window EP, which is the first kind of thing that I fully produced and mixed myself. Like, that was like, we did that at Born Fresh Studio. And I think that was like at the same time, while that EP was happening, which is a fully layered beatbox EP, I was like really deep into writing other rap songs. So it just seemed like something that I was doing. You know, in 2010, I produced a whole album, production album with DJ Butcher, Crate Creeps, which was both of us going back and forth on production. So I felt like just creating a beat vocally and then rapping on it was just like a natural thing. Like, yeah, I'm at some other point, or maybe that was the first time, but it didn't feel like anything huge for me. It was just like, oh, well, that makes sense because I can just do this now. But yeah, I mean, working with RA was a total different kettle of fish because, you know, Rugged Man's a legend. So to me, that was just like, like I met him in New York, and he came and saw one of the Tom Thum shows when we were playing on Broadway, and we just got in. He was like, yo, we should do a track together. I was like, yeah, right. As if that'll ever happen. And like, I recorded some stuff. He wanted that real old school beatbox feel on the track, you know, like Tila rock kind of like back and forth, typical old school kind of sounding party joint. But it was crazy, man. Like, I didn't expect it to actually happen. Like, I sent him through the stems, and then like a few years it just came out, and he'd called the track Tom Thum. So it was pretty mental. And then we went and shot a video for it in Berlin.
Yeah, and Babbly was in that video, right?
Oh yeah, and Sinjo as well. Sinjo was there too.
That's awesome, man. I remember watching that when it came out and being like, where? You got to work with RA? And you're bringing your boys onto the video shoot?
Yeah.
That hip-hop success story. Man.
Yeah, it was such a gnarly experience.
And is that, again, going to that area codes and you said Broken Windows, is that something, and working on Crate Creeps with DJ Butcher, making the production side of things where you were creating it all vocally, is that kind of, again, one of the, I guess, beginning footsteps of you getting into the production that you are now, where you're doing like crazy amount of hours to go and put together this clip, and crazy amount of hours in the studio to the crowdsource video, which I'll get into later, but just spending so much. That's but that's the apex of that style of stuff. But I'm saying being able to go and work as being self-sufficient and being able to go and put out your own stuff as a beatboxer. Is that like, were those the first kind of steps of you going towards where you are now in the building blocks that were set up?
Man, the first steps were not being able to pay for professional recording. Like, was not being able to afford studio time was the first step. And so it was just like, you know, literally recording on whatever I could, like, and just slowly chipping away at it, man. Like, there was no, I never studied it or I never had courses in it. I just taught myself over years and years and years. And it's definitely, I mean, I guess it's like a blessing and a curse because I am in control of my output. It means that sometimes I'll obsess over something far longer than it's worth obsessing over it for. You know what I mean? Like, and when I've worked with people in the studio, I find it so easy. I just go in, I do my thing. Someone goes, "Oh no, I think you could do that one better. Try again." And then you just kind of have to live with it, or else you look like a really annoying dude if you're just that guy like sitting in there and really digging into stuff. So it's good, man. Like I thoroughly recommend just getting a little snifter of production knowledge. You know, just like the tiniest little bit of spice. It really helps. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't learned to become a little bit self-sufficient in terms of editing and shooting and mixing. And it's so easy nowadays. Like, a lot of the devices that you carry around on your phone are shooting like high quality footage, like with a little bit of lighting knowledge, a little bit of like audio engineering knowledge, even if it's just like standard plugins or like stock standard stuff. You can make quantum leaps with very little effort that will like really push you forward. You know, a lot of the online battles that I've been judging and watching, a lot of the things, man, like, I'm not going to say that it comes down to the audio quality, but a lot of it is a lot more enjoyable to listen to when you can hear things clearly and it sounds bumping and loud. Like, I think if there's anything that's shown weaknesses during this whole like COVID thing, is people are going, "Oh, okay, now I need to learn to do this myself because there's no one doing it." You know, you're not going on stage and you don't have an incredible engineer like Sinjo to make you sound good. You have to do it yourself. And like, I mean, surely it comes out of you sounding good, but you want people to be able to consume your beatboxing like you hear it in your head, and just having like a little bit of knowledge in terms of like polishing the sound. It goes like crazy long way, man. And there's so many tutorials. So yeah, it's just like, even with a small amount of equipment, like tiny little handheld recorder and an iPhone and GarageBand with a bit of EQ knowledge, you'd like, you know,
can get it going. And it's funny to see how far the technology, as you said, just being able to have a phone that you be able to record it on and have these programs put into it. Because you March 1st, 2010, you put out a thing where you said you went to a studio and you had too much information to fit on one CD. There was too much information for you to go and put on this one CD, and it was too much data to go and actually make that. So with the new technologies coming along and you moving forward as a performer now, and you're sitting in your home studio that your father, Andrew Russell Clark, the shed builder, came and helped you go and put this whole thing together. But I was going to ask you, how does it feel to go and have a dedicated space to be creative in, and not be sitting there in hotel rooms trying to go and put pillows around things to go and make it, and trying to scrap together these things? And with the with that as well, aside from having a dedicated space, with the technologies nowadays making it easier for you to go and do this, and not coming into a problem like, "Oh, so I have too much data to go and put on one CD for me to go and put out to the people. How do I deal with this?" So how do you feel about having a dedicated space for yourself to be creative in? And how do you feel about how the technology has moved forward to make it easier for people to go and put out stuff and record themselves?
Well, the funny thing is, Scott, thank you for asking.
No problem.
Let me tell you. The technology is such that you don't need a dedicated space. Like, it's crazy, man. The amount of like just with the Zoom recorder. So for all my videos on the road are almost exclusively recorded through a Zoom mic. Like basically, like I've only had this place for 2 years probably, and everything before then was done in like hotel room cupboards with pillows stuffed in there, or like like just a room with like a mattress up against the wall. Like it's kind of the thing, like nowadays you don't have to like carry like huge equipment racks and monitors, and the technology and the equipment is becoming so accessible that you can do like high quality recordings and chuck them up on SoundCloud or put them up on Instagram. There's no like filter between people hearing your stuff and you creating it. You know what I mean? Like if you're on YouTube, or if you're on Instagram, or if you're on, whatever, TikTok, you can create a high quality video on your device and then send it out instantaneously to the people that want to see that. There's no label managers. There's no like other people kind of putting their fingers in and controlling your output, your creative output. I think it's kind of like the accessibility is like really broadened the spectrum of what people can do with technology and the access to everyone. But in terms of me having a space, man, I love just being by myself and nerding out, like really deep diving into things. And like, to be honest, if I hadn't read the news, I probably wouldn't even know that there's a global pandemic going on. You know what I mean? Like, this is what I do when I'm not touring. I just kind of hide away in here. Yeah. Like, when I moved into this house, everyone was recommending, oh, you got to put the studio like in a room in the house. It's going to be way easier. Just do that. But I wanted to like look out, have a nice view, be surrounded in nature, and just kind of have a place where it felt conducive to being creative and like, not being chaotic, especially when you're touring so much. You want to come back to a place that feels like a warm environment for being creative. And so I just built this on my own terms, man. I went like, well, I'm an adult and I've saved up some adult money, and now I'm going to like play with my toys. So it was good to like just really do whatever I wanted. I mean, within the constraints of like engineering and not having a strong breeze and losing your entire livelihood.
Yes,
but
yes.
yeah, man, it's really nice. Although when I'm not in the studio, like I went to my parents the other day and just kind of set up a table and got so much work done. Whereas here, I'm just so distracted by everything. Like I see something shiny outside and I'm like, ooh, it's just like a never ending cycle of hyperactivity. I see a colorful parrot, and then next thing you know, I'm driving up the shops to get bird seed and building bird boxes and things like that.
I'm talking to your friend Greg.
Yeah, Greggy.
Yeah, how is Greggy?
Yeah, she's good. I saw her today. Gave her some oats.
Yeah. That always made me laugh in your stories, because I saw you building this from just the Instagram stories you put up, and you'd always be like, hey, what's going on, Greggy? And you have your bird that came, and obviously a wild bird that you've befriended you and chosen to come back and hang out. So that was always super cute. But I'm glad that you have a space that you feel comfortable in and you've made for yourself. And are you in there? Obviously you're always working on something, but is there stuff that you've done in there that you feel you might not have been able to get to, or just by having that space, is there stuff that you've gotten to that you're like, okay, this is a great time in the space for me to do this, and now is the time that you might have been waiting to go and you record yourself to do stuff? Or is it like that inspiration and push you further to go and put out more stuff with having a space like this?
That's a good question, man. The ideal answer is that ever since I got a studio space, I've just been like an endless waterfall of creativity. But as I finished building it, it took so long and took so much energy that I just didn't want to go inside. Like I was like, oh, this again. And like, I don't know, it's weird, man. Like you kind of expect like certain things. You're like, when someone buys like a luxury cat toy and then they just go and jump in a cardboard box. That's kind of what I feel like sometimes. You know, I've built this like little castle for myself with all the bells and whistles, and then some get way more work done with a pair of shitty headphones sitting at my parents' dining room table. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of hard to say. Like, I wish there was an answer that was like, it's just amazing, you should do it. It felt like the right thing to do at the time, and I'm glad that I've got it because it's a nice little place that I can do what I need to do, but I don't think it's the only place that I can do what I need to do.
I like that. That's
it's nice because actually, you know what? It's nice because I can control my environment. It is soundproofed. I can hang lights from things. I can put green screens in. That's a really good thing for it. But in turn, like, I think creativity is just something that lives inside you and not inside a studio. So you can be creative. It just helps when you can, you know, like put cameras up and down on things and move mics in and make things like that. It's super slick. You're not like hanging things from coat hangers and
using a bunch of duct tape to go and make it happen.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, good.
Thumbs up, high fives on it. It's so tight.
Yeah.
I want to get back to your career a little bit more, and obviously you've been doing. There's just so much to go get through. But when the Tom Thum crew people essentially started having children, as you put it, and started moving on with other stuff they were doing, you ended up doing the Tom Thum Beating the Habit solo show at the Edinburgh Adelaide Fringe Festival as well. Both those festivals, and the whole idea was you're this guy addicted to making sounds, and you put out a video and a teaser for it. And I was gonna say, when at one point say that you if this would be a sold out show if it was just counting the front row, to actually selling out that show multiple times in a row, multiple times, and winning the Underbelly award as well for that show. How did that feel to go from kind of playing, as you said, with a front row that'd be there and you're like, all right, there's 7 people, excellent, to being able to sell out your own personal show that you created over time and time again?
Yeah, it was good.
All right, well.
All right. No, I mean, it was good, man, because I did create it myself. But I think I have like an unquenchable thirst for the next thing. So as soon as I'd done it a few times, I was like, okay, what's next? You know what I mean? Like it felt really great, but then like sometimes format and songs get tired and repetitious. So I think I'm just always searching for what to do next. And that came at a great time because, you know, Tom Thum had just fallen off and I was like, okay, what am I going to throw myself into so I'm not distracted and having some sort of existential crisis? So I just went balls deep into that and then picked up my balls and went somewhere else.
Keep on going. Did you ever figure out why the Scots like the noises of exploding animals?
Dude, that was fun, man. Like, yeah, there was some great parts of that show that, and it was very improvised. There was a lot of improvisation in it. And that was one of the things like that I couldn't have learnt how to do if I hadn't already spent so much time on, you know, like so much time in situations where you have to learn to improvise and work with crowds. And like you're saying, like guys that go busking, they're the best at that. Like busking, anything can happen. So I never figured out why the Scots like the sounds of exploding animals, but I did figure out that I was pretty like quick on my feet sometimes in terms of being able to just like crisis manage at a very short amount of time.
Yeah, well, it just made me laugh. I watched an interview where you're talking about the show afterwards with a young lady, and she was going on about parts of the show, and you said, well, there's a part where you would kind of ask the audience, because people always come up and say randomest noise, like, hey, what can you make the sound of a dinosaur? Hey, can you make the sound of a laser? Hey, can you make a sound of this? And you said that in Edinburgh, you were getting random questions like a dog and a cat fighting underwater. And how would you possibly go and make a dog and a cat fight each other underwater? And just, it's funny to go and get those ideas that are just out of freestyle fun, but then all of a sudden you work on it, you're like, okay, this is how this would sound, and then put your mind into something else and explore those sounds. That sounds like an awesome show.
Well, yeah, it was fun because I had a loop station at that time, so I could just go like, okay, well, there's that, there's this that you gotta set up, and sometimes it sucked, man. Like, to be honest, sometimes it failed, but people saw you trying to do it, and then you'd nail the next thing anyway. So it was cool, man. Like that kind of stuff just relied on people not having much of an imagination, and so like they'd be like, "Oh, can you do the sound of a machine gun?" You're like, "Okay, I could do the sound of a machine gun." Every time. But the most fun ones were people would just throw curveballs at you where you'd like have to really think about it and like find creative ways to do it.
Yeah, that's hilarious. It's still funny. Beatboxers, you get as most beatboxers get those people that come up and be like, "Can you make this sound?" Or if you're with kids, especially, kids just have their mind knows where it's going. It's just like, "Can you make the sound of a unicorn that's doing this and is this color?" You're like, no, but let me think about it for a second here and try to get something out that'll make you smile.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, man. It was fun. It was definitely fun. But one of the biggest takeaways that I got from that show was I really like doing things with other people. You know what I mean? You like, if there's two of you controlling the flight of an aircraft that's on fire, there's a better chance of survival. Sometimes it was a solo flight that was like destined for a rocky mountain, you know what I mean? Like it's nicer to crash and burn with someone you can laugh about the situation with.
Absolutely.
So while I really did enjoy performing that show, I definitely enjoy performing with other people more.
Yeah, you can
share the blame.
You've had a bunch of great collaborations, but I want to ask you too, okay, as I have my own ways of doing stuff, you have your own ways of doing stuff, but from doing a nightly show and having 30 dates in a row or something like that, like a crazy tour schedule or multiple shows in a day, what are your tips and what do you do to go and keep your voice fresh? How do you not go and affect it? Because I know from personal experience, but if you do too many shows in a row, it's going to wear you down unless you just simply don't talk to people in between shows, simply just be a hermit in your hotel room or something. But I've been drinking water and having like the teas and stuff. Is there anything that you do specifically now that you learned on the road to go and keep your voice at a high level and be able to perform?
Yeah. So if like, especially things like fringe festivals where it is like 30 shows in a row, every night for an hour, you like one little thing, man, like pushing it, or like going to a pub where the music's just up a little bit too loud and you have to talk over the sound of it, can ruin your entire show. So you just have to, in those scenarios, you just have to exercise discipline. And like one of the things that I've realized a lot, man, at beatbox events, you're always talking to people, and you're always talking over the noise of the PA, and then you come to do your show and you're like, oh, where's my voice gone? Yet, like it just really comes down to being aware that you have to preserve your voice, drinking a lot of water, like staying hydrated. I worked with an ENT doctor recently, and he was like, man, there's no magic formula. Like all these like concoctions and tinctures that everyone's got, like maybe they help mentally, but there's no science to suggest that like that's the way to go. Everyone's got their old wives' remedies and things like that. But he said like warming up your voice, like literally with steam, and hydration and rest are the things. And also warming up vocally, because it is a muscle, so you need to stretch it out. So I used to, before those shows, I used to have like long hot showers and just really try and flesh out the range that I had to use in the show. I'd do a lot of scratching, a lot of vocal scratching, because my technique of vocal scratching has a lot of like, so just like really trying to stretch that up and down. making sure that my full range was there, testing out all the whistle tone stuff, like, because I find if I've been talking a lot, that's like the first thing to go. So I just do scales in whistle tone, scales in bass, like a whole lot of like would like shake everything out. So it would just be a lot of warming up. And as I got older and older and older and older, it became even more important because your physiology like changes. Your muscles aren't as pliable or things like that. So it really is important to, I know it sounds like, okay, but it's like super important to take care of your voice, especially if you're like wanting to use that for the rest of your life to make a living.
Did you get any tips when you were working on that project, Live from the Larynx, where you had Dr. Broadhurst being a surgeon and putting a camera down your throat, and you did that live on a TED Talk afterwards to go and show it live on stage, getting the numbing agent and just at the right time to go and make sure that when it went down, it didn't hurt you or make it uncomfortable, which obviously live shows have delays and didn't really work too well. But
yeah.
Could you could you explain how that connection came for you, and if he had any insight into keeping a voice fresh, or was he just doing it that piece with you, that project with you, that study, just to go and see how and what it is in the actual throat, to go and see it, and what tissues would vibrate to make sounds and stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, he had a lot of literal insight into what I did, which was great. Like with the scope and everything. But that was a project that I initiated. I was sitting in a bar in where was that, in Brazil, talking to these guys, old like kind of Aussie rockers that were there for some reason. And I was showing them a bunch of sounds, and I showed them like a bass noise or something like that, and they're like, "Hey, how you doing that? That's incredible. How you make your voice go down? Like, how you doing that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just I guess it's the wobbly, flappy bit kind of. You know what? I have no idea." And so I just wanted to like, and I realized there wasn't many sources of information for that on like the anatomy of beatboxing, or whether it's dangerous, or like, what we're actually doing internally, because contemporary use of the voice hasn't really been studied to like a certain amount of depth that, normal use of the voice has. So I really wanted to just find out, man. So I applied for a government grant and got the grant. And I looked up best ENT doctors and just went to Dr. Broadhurst, asked him if he'd be interested, and he was just super down from the get-go, like waived all of his fees, was just keen as to get involved. So yeah, it was really dope, man. It was he's a really lovely guy, and I was really appreciative that he just like came on board so wholeheartedly. And
did you find
it was, what were you gonna say?
Did you find through that study and from his knowledge, can beatboxing affect your vocal cords in a negative way? Is there ramifications for doing it, or is that something that just naturally strengthens as you do it more like a muscle?
It's impossible to say, because everyone is doing different stuff. You know what I mean? Like everyone's voice or everyone's anatomy is different. Everyone's making different sounds. But he did notice that there was my vocal cords were perfect. Like there was no scarification or anything on there. He said that everything that he gathered from the study that he did with me, he couldn't see any evidence to suggest that what I was doing was negatively affecting my vocal cords. But that's not to say that it wasn't. I mean, it could be. Maybe I just didn't do a certain thing, you know what I mean? So like there's no definitive answer to say beatboxing is 100% safe for your vocal cords. Try it with the whole family. I think you just have to be not an idiot about it. If it hurts, just like cool your jets, have a nice cup of water, maybe read the Bible or something. I don't know. But like,
something like that. Yeah, like that sounds like something the guy from the picture of this promo would say. You know, like just pushing that in slightly. I see what you're doing. Push out. And
well, now that I've got you here, Scott, let me tell you about.
All right. You know, I walked into that.
Yeah, so it was a really great experience. He did notice that, like, my tongue muscles, my sublingual tongue muscles, so the muscles that support the underside of your tongue, were hypertrophied, which came from use in a way that other people hadn't been using their mandibular muscles and their lingual muscles. So it was really interesting to like go like, he was like, well, your vocal cords are anatomically exactly the same as everybody else I see, but you do have muscles under your tongue that are like staunch tongue muscles, and like, yeah,
just got a ripped like, tongue.
Yeah, exactly.
Just flexing on people.
Yeah. It's not
that big for a weird bodybuilding show. You just
exactly.
You get judged on tongue muscles. Everyone goes and has different. You know, put your tongue on the U. You do the clover.
Yeah.
Very nice clover.
Yeah. Apply this amount of pressure.
Yes, that's a different game. That'd be an alright game. I like this to see that muscle be taken. There's a couple more things I want to ask you about. You started off YouTube. YouTube channel is your online portfolio and your online business card, as you put it. And the first video that you put up there was basically filmed with a Nokia doing the Morse code and click rolls. And you've moved forward crazier and crazier and crazier in production level and learning how to go and put out these things. And I want to go and ask you about how much it took for you to go and do that crowdsourced video, because you said you had 407 different videos come in. You cut that down to 100 that made sense, even if they weren't in key, and you had to go and make sure that it all flowed together to make this piece. And you worked for about 6 weeks, 12-hour days straight on this piece, and that process is like the apex of putting all this effort into this video and putting all the production knowledge that you had and video editing and that you had in there. So it's crazy to see your first video of you just doing what a lot of beatboxers do, of just like, and doing the high pitched stuff, not those sounds necessarily, but just filming, hey, here's some beatboxing, to look at having hundreds of people send me this thing and I have to break it down and configure it and throw up this huge production value behind it, that not value, but like effort behind it. So it was great. It's good for myself. It was crazy to go and see how far you've come from just a video of you beatboxing to a Nokia to this level. But how much effort did that take? And
I'm super happy with it. It's like, I think that once I've like rid myself of all the trauma of making it, I'll look back on it and go, oh, that was really fun. But it was just a lot of work, man. I initially thought it was going to be like a 1 to 2 day process, but then like it just kept snowballing. Like I was like, oh, I want to do just like, you know, a couple of things. Maybe 5 people will send me something. Next minute, I've got 400 videos. And obviously you don't want to like, I tried to make as many of those work as I could. Some of it was just impossible to fit into the arrangement without it just looking tokenistic. You know what I mean? So It was kind of like, it was a lot. Man, I did everything in that video. Like, just from the very beginning, it was a lot of time consuming work, like sorting everything out, finding, like, every time I put a layer into that, I would go back through the videos and find something that would fit with that corresponding layer. Like, it was crazy, man. And there was some stuff that people sent me that was so sick, and I really tried to get stuff in there, and I just couldn't make it work in the grand scheme of things. But it was fun, man. Like, I had to work out ways of making, like, conforming the quality of 500 or 400 different iPhone videos, or like crappy videos with full of wind, and like think about it, man, like the tinniness you get from an iPhone recording is what I had to deal with for every single one of those videos. There was maybe like 10 people that sent me well-recorded stuff. The rest of it was just iPhone audio. So I had like, it was a huge learning experience for me to be able to try and find a way to mix that audio to make it sound big. You know what I mean? Like there was so much missing from the frequency spectrum, and finding creative ways to pair layers so it would sound like you had that whole spectrum of sound. Like I didn't want it to sound like 400 iPhones stuck together. I wanted it to sound like a produced track.
Yes.
So like doing that was hard. And then I was like, how am I going to stick all these videos together in a way that is creative? So I was like, oh, I'll just draw one frame. And then next minute, it's like, I've just literally just done everything. And it definitely broke me.
I was going to...
And then I kind of like threw it. I was like, oh no, if I'm only using 100 out of these videos, that means to point 300 people by not using their video. And so a lot of it was like, I really tried to use stuff a lot. And so I'd make a lot of mistakes. Like I would revise, and work on it in sections and try and find creative ways to join the sections, try and find ways to fit videos that I hadn't fit into the last section into the new one. Sometimes I'd write sections around like one video that I found. Like the first video that one of the people sent me was just like a bloke on his acoustic, and it was super dope loop. I was like, oh, it sounds like RJD2 or something like that. So that kind of set the vibe. And I was like, how am I going to conform 400 videos to one key? So I just changed it, just averaged everything out.
That must have been just, I can't imagine the amount of work that is to go and sit there day in, day out working on this. And something that I've noticed is no one gets to pick and choose what hits online. No one gets to pick and choose what works and crushes it, because you could put out a video right now of you just scratching with nothing, just you going like this, hey, it's Tom Thum, and doing your scratch and doing something quote unquote for you simple with no labor intensive process of this thing. And for some reason that video ends up in some unilad, something happens, and all of a sudden that thing again millions and millions and millions of hits. And then something that's so painstakingly taking your time to go and create and get to this point ends up not having the same level of success that you would think it deserves. And like the frustration as an artist, I can only imagine, of being like, specifically with this project itself, is being like, oh, why didn't that happen? And I hope that people, it's still obviously still out there and obviously still growing, but like how do you deal with, as an artist, of putting in effort and time to something that doesn't necessarily hit, when it's something that you personally are like, yes, this is the one that I want, and you don't even do it necessarily for views, but it's a way of measuring things somewhat, right?
Yeah, like I mean, it's definitely quantifiable by views. Like I guess you kind of go like, well, views is a measure of how well this resonates with a crowd. In some respects, like you might be able to see a view count as how popular the video was, whereas in reality there's a lot of mechanisms that happen behind the scenes. But yeah, man, like I was kind of heartbroken about the amount of work that I put into it to what I expected to be a little bit more visible in the whole spectrum of YouTube and stuff like that, like 40K views or something like that. And even if we're talking about monetization, to work for 6 weeks for 12-hour days, 40,000 views is like $40 from YouTube. You know what I mean? Like it's not that it was a money thing. I just want people to see it, because everyone put in so much of their time, and it was a really fun project for me because I didn't have to look at my dumb face. It was like, sick. There was all these other nice people doing their things and donating their art and their hard time as well. So I just really wanted to, make it hit. And it didn't, which is cool. But I've sort of like after that, I was like, man, what's the point? Like, I was really stressed. Like after sitting in chairs for that long, I was just like had huge like skeletal problems. I was like, is this worth it? It's like, am I an idiot? And yeah, like you said, man, like there's certain things that you do where you could just like shit out an idea and then it somehow just clicks and you're like, fuck, thank you, but no, this one.
Yeah, it took the one that I spent hours on.
Yeah, it's hard to curate your own success sometimes, you know, like, and I think like ever since that Live from the Larynx thing came out, one of my videos got flagged and demonetized. The one that was like the first one where they like put it down. They were like, the video's too explicit. And I'm like, it's my larynx. And they're like, yeah, but no one's going to want to advertise on that. So we're going to have to demonetize it. And it like in the first couple of days, it got like 2 million views. And then it's just sat there. It's done nothing since then. Like, and I kind of go like, what's going behind the scenes there at YouTube? Like, have I been like red flagged? And because every video since then has just been like, so I'm just like, man, what's the point? This used to be like a nice place where people could get the full spectrum of my artistic output. And now I'm just like, it broke my heart a little bit, to be honest.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that because obviously you want the effort put in to go and not monetarily, but just being able to be that satisfaction as an artist to go and look back and be like, yes, what I did resonated, what I did connected, and it's being pushed. So I have no idea about algorithms. I have no idea about stuff that happens on YouTube. I'm terrible with technology, so I can't answer those questions for you. But I was gonna say every about 7 years, you've questioned this as your career choice, and you've had those moments where you're like, just before you went to the world champs or whatever, when you're starting out, you're like, okay, maybe that now you come back from that. Okay, now you're going to take it a little more seriously. Then you said in 2013, which obviously is your friend Jordan asked you to go and do a TED Talk just for free, but just come out, would probably be good for your exposure. And you end up going there to the Sydney Opera House and getting the most viewed one of all time, which, for a second,
my friend Papuni.
Wait a second. He's coming up later. But that's for your TEDx talk, because you smashed that out the park, and that's something that you give yourself a little pat on the back. But that's one that you smashed out the park, that you said that you got there in the morning and you didn't think anything of, really, because you were going after all these people that were very astute and talking about all these things, and then your spoken word friend went up to go and for yourself get a little more loose, and then when you went up and did your thing, it wasn't a really structured out thing that you thought of and had every single thing purposely 100 being like, I got to do this, then do that, do this, do that, and this, do that, and this. Mm-hmm. And you said because of that, it became very free flowing, and you kind of put some ideas together, but it wasn't like your most thought out show. And having that smash out and kill and just absolutely doing amazing for you, and 70 whatever million it is now views, that was a point where you said it actually again reinvigorated your idea and restated, like, confirmed that, okay, I'm doing something that I'm good at, I'm doing something that I can work, and realized that you have another chance at going and being more selective with your shows, not just doing stuff for money, and being able to go and figure out which ones you want to do and choose projects that are important to you. So why is it that you think that everyone goes through doubts in their career, and they have those moments where they second guess, and maybe the past 11, 14, 20, however many years you've been doing something, as you said before, is it worth it? Am I wasting my time? Should I have done this? But what is it that comes in your mind, aside from points like the TEDx talk, or points that you've had along that have really helped you reconfirm? Like recently you did the Beethoven Festival in Germany, in Bern, Germany. You said that was another one, that going there and being able to perform there on such a high level of having stuff ready for you so you can just be the artist. So moments like that in your career that confirm and reconfirm to yourself that you're doing something you should be, how does that get in your mind, and how does that like allow you to overcome those thoughts of doubt that you get as an artist?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like I said, because I am so insular about and so closed off with my entire production process a little bit. I have quality control, and sometimes I think my standards might be a bit too rigid. Like I think everything's shit. And then when I have something that I'm really proud of, it doesn't resonate. And you go, fuck, am I just shit? Like, is this bad what I'm doing? Like, is this good stuff? Like, I thought that was good, but like, man, most of the time I don't overcome it. It's just something that's always there. And a lot of the time, if you're in a healthy state of mind, that pushes you forward, that not like constantly wanting to improve, like not being satisfied with your end result, often pushes you to keep trying, keep getting back on the horse, and like keep trying to reinvent yourself until you find something that works. But then other times you can just really go into your own head in it about it and find a lot more solace and simplicity, like things like just going outside and appreciating nature and that, and like kind of going like, man, even recently after like heavy touring that didn't reap, big rewards, or like, sometimes I've been doing this for a long time and still doing tours where you're like sleeping on a couch, or you're in like shitty situations where you're like, man, like surely there's a greater reward that I could be having. Maybe I'm not pushing myself hard enough, or there's just certain things. Like I think a lot of the time it's just things you can't escape if you have an active mind. And like I said, it can be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy sometimes. So in terms of like self-doubt, I think it's just like a battle that you're constantly grappling with. Sometimes you're on top, sometimes you're pinned down, sometimes you're covered in oil.
Yeah, sometimes in jello, mud.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you're gonna want the oil. You're gonna want that.
Yeah,
probably easier.
Yeah, man. So I think it's just a balance. I think for me, it's definitely a balance. And I think sometimes you overcompensate. Like you might make it a huge win and then take a small loss, and then that's the thing that you end up focusing on. So, I mean, I think it just depends how mentally stable you are on how well you can kind of work that. Sometimes, man, like especially with crowdsource, I wasn't regulating the amount of time I spent in the studio. I wasn't going, okay, you need to have a break now. You need to go outside. You need to do some exercise. You need to drink some water. I was just obsessively like a golem, like sitting in here like, my precious. And then just, I think it kind of burnt me out. Like I regularly go through burnouts, man, like hardcore all the time. Some days I'll just like, it will just come flowing out. Other days I just dread forcing creativity. Like if you have to have like a resolute kind of mind frame when it comes to being creative. Some people are creative in response to emotional stimulus. You know what I mean? Like they turn their pains or whatever into songs. But you can't just force creativity. Never. You can never go like, today I don't feel creative, but I'm going to be. You always have to have that thing that pushes it out of you, as opposed to just turning it on, turning it off. Surely you can pump something out, but it's not going to be dope, and you're not going to be as invested in it as you should be. So I think it's just it's really just a balancing act.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed, and you again something that is a good lesson to learn is being able to go and be proud of what you're going to go and put out, and be connected to your projects that you're in. Because if you don't care about it, why will anybody else? And it's been again, I consider you a friend, and I'm a fan of your work, and it's been it's nice to see somebody being successful, but doing the way that they want to do it, and not being kind of pigeonholed into doing stuff that they don't want to do necessarily. And one of the projects that I saw that's just really like, it's mind blowing for me to go and watch. But when you started working with Gordon Hamilton on thumbprints and pairing beatboxing with orchestras, and then again you did that in the Beethoven Festival in Bern, Germany, and you've been able to go and do your piece Ratchet Face and work with him and continue to work with him on different levels of it with full orchestras, and you being the beatboxing and the sound effect, and during the performance him being the conductor but leading you up through sounds and stopping, and then having that coordinated to like kind of moment in the show. Like how did you get that opportunity, and is there more I know there's one project that you're talking about, I'm not sure if it's still going to happen due to the world situation, but October 11th and 12th you're scoring for a silent film for the Brisbane International Film Festival in
that was last year. We did that.
That was last year. Oh,
it was great.
I wish there's because you said there'd be a video of it, and it's the Alita, Queen of Mars, 2 hours and 6 minutes that you were doing with Ben Walsh, the drummer for The Bird, Gordon Hamilton, and you've been working on it to go and make that a full-length recording with them. So you've done from orchestras, now you're working on the silent film scoring and doing a live version of it. How has it been working with orchestras, having to learn chords, having to learn to be exactly in tune, having to learn timing, and also how is that live scoring project that you did with him and Ben Walsh working together on that crazy sci-fi piece from Russia?
Yeah, well, man, like the orchestra stuff was another one of those like really defining dot points. You know, like you can put dot points across your life. That was like certainly one for me. And another realization where I was like, man, I really need to be a better musician in order to stand out here in front of all these consummate professionals, in front of an audience that might have spent $30-40 on a ticket. I need to be good at what I'm doing. I need to be confident. I need to be musical, and I need to be a professional, and I need to enjoy it. Because like you were saying, if you're not enjoying it, it's not worth doing. So it was really good, man. Like Gordon, he's taught me a lot about music, especially like dissonance and some of the like a lot of people assume music is beautiful. Sometimes it can sound terrible, like to a, you know, like things like Stravinsky pieces where there's so much dissonance and conflict within the actual chords, like conflicting notes and things that invoke emotive responses in people, like, you know, sounds that can bring things out. Like that has been really fun for me to learn, like, because before I started really digging in on it and on what kind of responses you can get from those really dark dissonant chords, to me it sounded wrong. Like it sounded like they were playing things badly. But now working with Gordon, it's really like opened my eyes to some of the stuff that you don't learn when just listening to hip hop or you just listening to whatever's on the radio, you know what I mean? Like it's been really great. And he's awesome, man. Like he's a very forward thinking composer, conductor. So he's never said no to any of my ideas. We've always like given everything a try. Like we've just given it a red hot go, and it does feel like a very even partnership in terms of the ideas that we're bringing to the table and how we're presenting ourselves. And it's all been on our own terms. Like no one's gone like, oh, you know, we've got this orchestral project, but you just have to play the Nutcracker, or you have to play, like, it's like you can do your original music, do whatever you want. Like we just want the show. And so it's been really cool to be able to like just have an idea in the shower, and then go and hum that into my iPhone, send it text to him with that, little passage. And then next minute we're playing it with a symphony orchestra in Nuremberg or Cologne. It's pretty gnarly to think, and it's certainly not something that I would have ever expected me to do. If you went back to Scribble Jam and you're like, rocked up to the graffiti wall and spoke to like Tom back then, I reckon Tom back then probably would have tried to bash Tom now. You're like, that's not hip hop.
That's work, man.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been really cool. I just wrote a piece. Gordon's actually a choir master as well. He conducts and writes for a contemporary choir. So I just finished. He asked me to write a commission for their choir. So I found like this gnarly instructional video on how to navigate celestially. Like it's like this old like sauced up guy sitting in an armchair like, now I would like to tell you about how to navigate with the stars. You must conduct. Like it's like this crazy 70s treatment. And so I wrote a whole piece for choir around this narration. It's super weird, and it was super challenging because as a beatboxer I had to think of techniques that I could easily teach that would be effective for 24 voices. It was really cool, man. It was a really interesting experience, and a crazy one to notate. The score that Gordon wrote for it just looks like total ramblings of a crazy person. So yeah, it's been incredible working with him and being able to test out ideas with such a time-tested thing like an orchestra.
Absolutely. And how was that experience though for that silent film? Is there a video of that people can see for the Alita Queen of Mars where you were doing it all? Because I'd love to go and watch that. The way that you were talking about it, of using like a drill and using a fan, and also just trying to go and have this drum. You're working with your drummer friend Ben Walsh, and you have him, Gordon, doing stuff as well with you. Like I can picture it in my head what I think, and I know it's totally off, but I just assume absolute madness and a silent film, Soviet era Russian film, like sci-fi.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. It was like, because it was like Soviet era. It's full of propaganda, this film. So there's just like 10-minute scenes of giant army parades that feed nothing into the narrative of the story. Like just like showing off the might of the Union, and like it was really interesting. Like it's a nice historical snapshot as well, because it's one of the first sci-fi movies ever made. Like the concept of man flying into space and falling in love with an alien woman. So it was fun, man. We just got to like really experiment with stuff, like using pitch drills, like you're saying, and fans for bass. Like we just really experimented with it. And there was supposed to be a video, but the whole thing is I had like very detailed cue sheets that we were playing along to, like with timings for hits, timings to remind us about what pieces of music to play next. But everything in between, the actual music, was improvised around a framework. So none of us had notes or like scores. We just went, okay, this is in this key, this is the tempo, the groove here, we have to trigger that thing, remember to trigger this in 3, 2, 1. Like it was very meticulously planned out like that, but the actual musical elements of it were very improvised. And the guy that was filming on the first night forgot to record the sound, but he video, and then came the next night to record the sound, but didn't record the video. So,
sick.
Yeah, cheers, bro. So it's probably better off that it's a silent film in that regard, because it just didn't work.
Is that something
I
that
haven't
you're
even seen it? We've been asking for the video, but I'm assuming that it just didn't work.
Is that something that you'd revisit at a later date and have someone that, knows how to press record on stuff?
Man, I'd love to do it again. I would definitely shorten the movie. It was a long slog, man. Like, imagine 2 hours of what we would now know as a boring movie. Like, it was tiresome. Like a scene that was like 4 minutes long of just the train arriving at a station. Like the whole movie could have been shortened to 20 minutes to get the point across. But because it was owned by the National Film and Sound Archive in Canberra, we just couldn't touch it. It was just, you could just play along to it. They were very protective of it.
Well, next time you do it, maybe you can get Madox and Sinjo in there to go and record stuff properly and visually, and you'll be able to go and be able to have a piece to put out on YouTube. And maybe someone will sit through 2 hours and 6 minutes of you guys doing this too, live propaganda.
Mate, if they couldn't sit through 4 minutes of my crowdsourced video, I doubt that.
I genuinely want to see that though. I just think it'd be like in my head, just playing it out, and I haven't seen clips of the movie yet, but I'm just thinking in my mind, just laughing, being like, I could just see you sitting there with all these like props and stuff ready to go, being like, all right, and like next thing is.
Yeah, it was cool, man. And like we had placards, like I made placards like with audience commands on times. We'd like flash lights on the commands to make the audience to make the sounds of chemistry labs and stuff, like going like hiss, 3, 2, 1, hiss, and then it would correlate to like actions happening on the screen and like creating like stereo sound bubbles with the audience. And it was really fun. And I initially had the idea that I wanted to get a choir in the back row as well to create like full scope of surround sound, but like acoustic surround sound. So I'd written this piece of music to have like in this this like apex part of the video where there was this huge like death scene, and I was on this like fucking spinning vacuum tube thing. And then at that point, I wanted the choir to like start singing from behind the audience, but I didn't get enough budget for the choir. But it was an idea.
It's an idea that may come to fruition in future attempts at this, where it'll be filmed and able to be viewed.
Yeah, exactly. But it was really fun, man. It was a crazy experience. We wrote 63 pieces of music in 3 days for it. Yeah,
that's a lot, man. You've had a crazy career thus far, and it's only you still have a long way of going and a lot of things to do. It, I believe personally, and I see nothing but potential. And thank you for coming on today. Have you had a good time so far?
Absolutely. Always a good time with you, Scotty.
Yeah. Tom said he's having a good time. Make my day. Well, we're going to get into another little section. We're going to do something called rapid fire questions. So I'm just going to ask you like 6-7 questions in a row. Short answers. First thing that comes to your mind. No pressure. Mm-hmm. But ladies and gentlemen, it's time for rapid fire.
My friend Papuni
is going to come up next after that as well. But ladies and gentlemen,
rapid fire.
All right, Tom. First and foremost, favorite solo beatboxer currently?
Vocoder.
Favorite loopstation beatboxer currently?
MB14.
Favorite tag team currently?
Spider Horse.
Ooh. Do you still dread durian?
No, I gave it another crack when I was in Malaysia. Wasn't as bad.
Do you still think of yourself as dropped Miss Rhyme?
Nah, I've dropped that part. Yeah.
Do you still wax
past his prime?
Oh, hey now. Do you still wax your body every 3 days?
Yeah, I mean, I've been waxing this for 35 years. Hasn't been any regrowth yet.
What is the most important national monument that you've ever hung off of?
Your bicep.
Oh, coming at you live and direct, ladies and gentlemen. And do you like Australian meat pie?
Yes, of course.
That was
best
from
meat pies in Ipswich out this way.
That was from my friend
Papuni.
right there. But ladies and gentlemen, that was real quick section. Very easy. So we finished that off. But now it's time for
my friend Papuni.
My friend Papuni.
Questions from
my friend Papuni.
My friend Papuni. My friend Papuni.
Oh, I love having a little bit of a one shot on there. It's so good. But my friend Papuni has some questions that he wanted to go and ask you during this interview. And I know we've been on for a good long while, so I'm going to try to go and get through this, but it's just a little fun part. He wants to go and say, how was experience GBB for the first time last year? How did it affect your beatboxing after coming back and being a judge at the Loopstation? And also in general, what are your feelings about this? Because when I did some research too, I saw in 2011 he was reaching out to try to get you to the first GBBs, and going on and trying to get you to come over to this idea that was brought up by Claudio and having this battle. So how was the GBB for you as a judge, as a being able to perform there with Gene? How was that to go and just see the GBB live and direct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was great. Obviously, it was killer. I mean, the best beatbox event in terms of most aspects from what I've seen. Like, I haven't been to anything that's been like more meticulously managed and kind of curated. So, I mean, first of all, as an event, it was incredible. It was so nice to like meet so many people, and also just like, you know, sometimes, like I was saying, in Australia, I kind of just stay in my studio. So it was nice to like go there and people would talk to me and be like, oh, hey man, you know, I got into this because of this thing you did, or I really like crowdsource. I was one of the 5 people that watched it. Cool. Like that was dope. That was really nice to meet everyone, see everyone that I hadn't seen in a long time as well, you know, like just to hang out. But also the concept of the thing with Gene, that was one of my favorite artistic experiences I've had. Like, and you know, the SBX guys set that up, and it was really cool, man. Like, it was really intense couple of days, but really nice, and it was a pleasure to work with Gene. And I'm sure it would have been possible that we could have done that independently, but it took initiative from the SBX crew to like put us together in a room and just see what we came up with. And it was, man, like I felt like we were just scratching the surface. So it was so nice to have that experience, to work with Gene and work with Saro and Mohammed. But an even bigger pleasure to be able to present what we did at such a prestigious event like GBB, and to be a judge there. You know, like every time I judge something, I feel like I'm judging people that are far more proficient at their art than what I am. So I always feel a bit like conflicted to do it, but I was so like humbled and happy that I was invited there to like sit on the panel with everyone else and just like see some people that were like leveling up. Like, it was crazy, man. It was really dope.
And that project that you talked about, with another question that he has is about specifically that project with Gene Shinosaki, with when you did the work for Boss and working on that project. Is that something that you want to do more of with another artist, possibly in the beatbox world, that you could do with Swiss Beatbox and pair up again? Is that something that interests you? And if there was someone else, is there other people that you would think of working with after being at GBB?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course. I definitely want to do that concept again. Like, it was sick, man. It was really fun. Yeah, it was just great to like sit in a room with people that you hadn't worked with before and just understand how their brains work creatively and find the common ground between both of our two brains and kind of see like the fruits that our ideas kind of grew. So that was super dope. And yes, I would do it again with any other artists. And sometimes I feel like if I choose, I might not be getting the full experience. Like, I think anyone that I paired up with, I'm sure we could find something dope. So I mean, obviously I'd love to do something with MB14. I feel like we've got quite similar styles musically, and we could do some really cool stuff. Man, literally anyone, just anyone. I love collaboration. I'm lonely over here, except for Greggy. No.
Except for Greggy.
Yeah, man. It was, in summary, it was such a great experience and something that I would love to do again. And I would urge anyone that gets the opportunity to jump on board. Like, even if I'm not involved, like, do it. It was really great. And it really pushed me to learn and to be better and to rehearse. Like we rehearsed like heaps for that. And I wouldn't otherwise. I just probably would not perform. I'd just be like, I'd get scared, just run, hide into dunnies until it was over. So it was really good. It was great, man. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was a very enjoyable to watch live and introduce you guys to go and have that on at the stage at GVB and actually go and watch it as well. Obviously, the polished version that Madox and Sinjo put together with you guys when you actually filmed it for Boss. So it was dope to have that video. And another question he has is, are you still his OC homie?
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, the real OC. The VP OC.
Okay. So Paponi, that's for you. That's for you because I wasn't exactly sure what he meant by that, but
My friend Papuni.
And yours is his real OC homie.
Yeah, probably can't explain what that means.
Oh, I see what you're going for.
I'll tell you next time I see you.
Yeah. Well, we'll just end the stream and then you'll tell me, and I'll laugh like a little schoolgirl.
Yeah.
His last question is, since you have your studio and when times get back to relative normalcy, I might be ad-libbing a little bit there, but what are your special plans in the making to work with SBX, and would you allow them to come down to your studio for a session to create something for SBX, because SBX loves you and they want to make sure that you never forget about them and that you guys are always having the opportunity to work together?
Yeah, of course. They can come down whenever they want. The door's open. Literally, it's open right now about the contents of my house.
Huh.
So, of course. We've talked about that, and I would love that. Yeah, man. Those dudes are my homies. They're my fam, of course. I've literally slept in at Paponi's house, and they've slept here. Sinjo left a pair of his underpants hanging over a chair in my backyard. I've got bits of them still here. Come get your underpants, Aaron.
They're gonna put them up as a flag, just as in memory on a small stick and a flagpole. Raise it every day,
Yeah. Hoist it.
So,
yeah, man. It's so down. I'm so down.
All right. Well, you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are questions from
My friend Papuni.
And making sure that he's the original OC homie still, and that there will possibly be future projects with them from Australia live in his studio that he has built. I'm going to go and say it's been a good time talking to you, man. But right now, the last thing on the list that we're going to do is I got a message from Madox, who's running the live stream today. Big shout-outs to Madox, by the way, for helping us make this all happen. Excuse the technical delays yesterday, and I apologize to you as well, because it's got to make sure that it's running on time, and I'm sure people were trying to tune in. So thank you guys for supporting Beyond the Beats. But the questions now are from the crowd. From the crowd, ladies and gentlemen. Hesh. We're going to get into some questions right here that they were asking throughout this time that they were watching. So, let me see here. What's a good one? What other hobbies do you have apart from beatboxing? I know you're a big outdoors guy and gardening. So, what other hobbies do you have other than beatboxing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I like drawing and art too, and film. But outside of everything that's contained in this room, yeah, I mean, I like hiking and snow diving, and I grow all my own food. Well, I'm trying to be self-sufficient with the food that I grow here on my property. What else do I like doing? I don't know. I've got all these weird niche interests. I like fishing. I like kayaking. Basically, I spend so much time inside that I need to balance it with a little bit of vitamin D. So anything that kind of gets me outside and in nature really kind of balances me and relaxes me. So I would say that outdoorsy things is a pretty broad spectrum hobby of mine.
Well, it's a good one. I thoroughly like getting outdoors as well. If you can get out, and if you ever have the opportunity to be in Canada, I'll take you to a few lakes and you'll have a good time. We're fishing and swimming around. I brought some of the guys up to my parents' cottage when they were up for the Great North Battle, and everyone had a good time. I'm sure that you would fit right at home there. So outdoors and yeah, it's a good time to be outside. And another question from the crowd. We're going to go and ask you, what is the toughest beatbox sound you've ever had to learn, and why was it hard to go and get?
Oh, man. I think, like, one of the ones that I struggled with for a while was just learning vocal bass because it hurts so much. At first. I would say inwards bass, but I haven't learnt it yet. But I'm trying, and it reminds me of when I started learning vocal bass and like how just great on your vocal folds. So maybe I'm just learning it wrong. Maybe someone needs to give me some tips. Maybe it shouldn't hurt. But it's I would say vocal bass was the one that like took me the longest to do effectively. No, it didn't take me long to learn, but to like use responsibly. That was probably one of them. It took me ages to learn lip rolls as well. That was like way too long. But Ballsy broke it down to me pretty well, so that was dope. But yeah, I'd say those two
would be the hardest ones that you've had to learn in the process to go through it. That's the
hardest learning, not the hardest sounds. Just like it took me way to learn. Whereas someone watches a tutorial once and then they just lip roll master. I'm like, what do you call a lube roll?
Yeah, lip roll, come on.
Got there in the end.
The last question from the crowd. We're gonna go with, how do you train your vocal cords? How do you personally train your vocal cords?
Cool. So I just slowly climbing or descending to the extremities of my range. Sometimes I play a lot of piano as well. Terrible, but I find it really good for building chords and stuff like that. So I'll often just sit at the piano and try and see what I can reach on the keys. But like I was saying before, a lot of scratching and sliding, like just trying to like smooth out the breaks in my voice. And then, yeah, man, just scales and singing different melodies, finding melodies that my brain isn't familiar with, and then just drilling them. That's really helpful. But I guess it's just practice, man. Just practice knowing what's realistic to your range and then trying to stretch it. Yeah. I think that's probably the best thing to say. That's how I've learned from experience. I know the best way to do it, just because I haven't really had any musical training or anything like that. But I would say that sounds like the right thing to say in this context.
That was questions from the audience. So at this point in time, I don't know, because it's now probably just after midnight approximately on your end. I'm not sure what the time is for you, but we've been here for a while talking.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, do you have energy?
And flies with you, Scotty.
Hey?
Just flies.
Oh.
The time?
Yeah. Talking to you is like, talking to a friend, and, I forgot that we were even live streaming necessarily until I looked at my phone buzzing a bunch of times. So I'm seeing like a lot of people are watching with us. A lot of people are here saying hi from all over the world and enjoying the interview. So thank you guys for tuning in by once again Beyond the Beats. We're on episode 4 here with Tom Thum. And I wanted to go and ask you, do you have energy right now? I know it's a little bit late to do a little beatbox for us or a showcase of something that you have, or it doesn't matter if it's a solo, doesn't matter if you're press and play or something that you want to go and get into for a quick second if you have time.
Oh man, I'm like, I do have this video that I've been working on the last couple of. It's probably not going to do it justice if I just show you with the sound on, but I've been working on this video, which I guess I'm probably going to drop tomorrow or the next day. When I create videos, often like the sounds are so minute, like the tiny little noises are so small that they're not that visually engaging. And so for this video, my brief that I set for myself was to use the mic and in ways that is visually engaging. So a lot of proximity effect stuff and really trying to make it a bit more of a visual performance so people could really make the connection between what they're seeing on the screen and the sound that they're hearing in their headphones. So I've been working on that the last couple of days, and it's definitely weird. Like it's a song, so I'm excited about that. And then also on top of that, there's like the stuff that I've done with Bombay Chamber Orchestra, the TEDx that I did in Mumbai. I think that'll be dropping soon, as well as the choir piece that I did for Gordon will be dropping soon. In terms of like beatbox stuff, man, oh, what have I got? I don't know, man. I'll save something for an SBX exclusive.
All right, that's the deal. Because I was trying to go and say, I say the 3, y'all say the 2 and the 1 in 3. And hopefully you'd follow up with some beatboxing, but I know it's late night.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that afterwards. And just seeing if you if you had the time to go do that, or not the time, but if you had the voice ready to go. So it was kind of a surprise. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that we've been talking to Tom Thum here, and as he said, he has a TEDx coming out from Mumbai that he's worked on that's going to be coming out very soon, and he has got a video that possibly is dropping tomorrow that he's going to be putting out. He's got a few other projects in the go, and I wanted to go and ask you last thing before we get out of here, 2 last questions. One being, in moments and periods where you say you're unsure of yourself, and one of them being recently, you said that you're considering going back to study environmental engineering as a possibility of something. Is that something that you're still thinking about, or is that a future plan for later on, Tom, or is that something that you're just interested in that you were thinking about?
I'm definitely interested in it. I always have, because I spend, like I said, a lot of time in the garden, and I'm trying to make the place I live a more closed cycle system to eliminate like a lot of the waste products. So we goes back into the garden, and we were on a grey water system here, and trying to grow all of our own veggies and trying to be a little bit more self-sufficient and kind of conscious about it. So I do have a lot of ideas just through the general course of my daily life working around outside that I want to flesh out. I don't know whether it's like something you study in university, but it definitely does interest me, like sustainable systems and future-proofing things, especially in Australia where it's so dry and our climate is so unpredictable. It really fascinates me, man, like permaculture systems and things like that. That's definitely something, like, of course I'm not going to just like give up my artist hat. I could never do that. I think that anyone just says, "Oh, I'm not doing music anymore," probably shouldn't have started doing music in the first place.
True.
So, yeah, I feel like if I had more downtime, which I've got plenty of right now, I should really rip into it, because it does fascinate me, and it might be a nice balance to music life and touring. So for sure, that's definitely a possibility.
And then you compare with your interest of being outdoors and having that nature that is, again, if you follow him up on Instagram or follow him, a lot of your pictures and stuff are you hiking and you hanging out with Greggy and hanging out with just the animals that are around and dealing with the brown snakes while you were building your the endless brown snakes that were popping up when you're building your studio that you had to have removed. So that's one question I had. And then and you said possibly this is something from a random interview, and you can tell me if that's something that you're still working on or is released, but you were working on a process of an animated series based around Australian wildlife. Is that something that's still going on?
Look, man, it is. Like, I want to show you like some of it. I was so keen on it, dude. Like, there was like a period around the same time I was creating Crowdsource that I wrote a full treatment and pitch document for this concept. Don't feed the wildlife. Basically about the character flaws of Australian native animals, but they're all just kind of like screwed up. Like the koala's an ex-junkie. There's a kookaburra that's a manic depressant. Like they're all just like a little bit twisted and just sketchy kind of characters, and it's all like following a close political mirror of what happens in Australia, a lot of times there's this huge bushfire, which there was a huge bushfire just recently, like, and all these animals find themselves in a refugee camp and ends up becoming this big politicized kind of thing. And then there's a virus outbreak inside of chlamydia from the koala. Like, it's just like, it's really twisted, and I really had a great time coming up with the concept. So I do hope that it kind of eventually comes to fruition. I just kind of lost a bit of time. Like, I don't know if you guys can see that there, but this is like a hermit crab that lives in a mangrove swamp in an old bong because his parents bought up all the property.
Housing crisis.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, there's like a baby boomer hermit crab that lives in a camper van and just travels around the country. His son can't afford anywhere to live, so he lives in an old upturned bong in an orchie bottle that he found in a mangrove swamp. And here's I don't know if you can see that, but that's like the koala's chlamydia cell that sings Broadway numbers. And then yeah, like, it's all pretty weird. Like, this is there's like this character that's in a taboo relationship with the koala, a feral cat, and there's like this micro bat that flew into a 5G tower, and now it's like irradiated, and it's a conspiracy theorist. So it's all like very dark humor, but closely kind of traveling along the same trajectory as what Australia is going through. But yeah,
is that something that has kind of been put on a back burner, but you were looking to animate or do the drawings for, as well as the soundscape for as well, this project?
Yeah, so for the most part, I was writing it and doing the drawings, but I don't want to animate it. It will be all vector images, so someone else can animate my drawings for me. I'm dug way too deep in the tedious nature of a lot of other editing procedures, so I definitely don't want to do that. I just want to I like the idea of all of these vastly different animals with character flaws being locked in an area together. And like, yeah, it's a very not overtly political, but there is a lot of undertones kind of mirrored in Australian life at the moment. So very touching, and I showed it to some people, and they're like, "Whoa, dude, you can't make that kind of joke, bro. Dial that back." And so I knew that I was onto something then.
Yes. Going through that uncomfortable point, or those points of people feeling awkward, usually has gold written all over it.
Exactly, yeah. So I hopefully one day, man, I'm still very much in love with that idea, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to see that project. I'm excited to see your other projects that you're working on, new videos that are coming out for you, and just you to keep on being you, because you're awesome. And the last thing, I swear, because we've sat together, and I know that it's getting later on your end, and people are loving it watching, so thank you guys for tuning in. But the tips that you gave in one interview, when they ask you for tips and on life and just, I guess, philosophies, and kind of your tips were give yourself space, give yourself distance, and make sure you enjoy what you're doing. Don't compromise your integrity. Don't do something that you're not comfortable with, and think outside the box, get offline. Don't get too deep into the comments, and get into nature. So those were some of the tips that you gave, just philosophizing. I can't even say the word, but anyways, but your thoughts on life. Just that's about
yeah.
Then another thing, they're a friend. But those were some of the tips that you gave on life. And I just want to end off, my last question is is there anything specifically for beatboxers? Any tips and tricks, not tricks, but just any tips and tidbits that you want to go and throw and advise the beatboxers watching and that'll watch this back, specifically for our beatbox scene?
Yep. Yeah, totally. I would say that it's quite akin to what Kid Lucky told me. There are other avenues, like battling is not the be all and end all to becoming a successful beatboxer or an artist. There are a lot of parallel avenues as well that you can explore. Like, please don't be scared to collaborate. Like, oftentimes some of the weirdest collaborations are often the most fruitful because there's more avenues to explore in them because they haven't been explored before. I really want to work on some other things that I probably shouldn't say in case someone takes the idea, but please don't be scared to try weird things and fail at some, because some of them will be amazing. And collaborate with as many people as you can, because it will help you become a better musician. It'll help you become a better performer. Get stage time outside of your comfort zone. Go to open mics. Go to like comedy open mics. Throw yourself in the deep end. That's the best way to learn, is just by like coming under fire. You know, like the best places to shelter when you're like in the middle of it. You have to perform and you do really well. So I would just say, get out of your comfort zone. If you're looking to become, if you want to become a professional beatboxer or a musician, you have to step outside of, you know, some of the more rigid pathways to what you might see in front of you. Like I said, battling isn't the only way. There's so many different avenues that you can do, like collaboration, just stage experience, talk to people, try and think strangely. Look at what people are doing and then find what people are not doing. Identify all the things that people aren't doing and then just throw yourself into it. Because I think that has worked for me. Might not work for everyone, but that's for sure how I've managed to maintain a career doing what I love. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. No,
time.
Yeah, we're waiting for it, and that's time. No, but good, solid words of advice, and you've been in this game for a while. I can't wait to see where you're going to go with your career and what avenues you're going to take, and steering the ship somewhat with beatboxing and being in the foreground of that. Because, again, I always love seeing and always think that if the generations that come after us are worse than what we are doing, or not as progressive or not as forward thinking, then we have failed them. So I definitely, I'm saying from a guy about your age who's very much involved in a similar scene, thank you for being able to push the limits to these things and push that idea upon the next generation to go and pursue the idea of advancement and being socially aware of what you're doing and being forward thinking and things, instead of being muddled into the same old, you're a background party trick noise and you're not actually an artist. So I appreciate that you've paved the way for that and helped pave the way for the future generations, man.
Oh, thank you, my bre.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
All right. So, we've gone through your career from times of Tom Thum, from times of world champs working with Joel Turner, from Tommy Illfigga to all sorts of stuff in between. The TEDx talk obviously is a thing that's huge. You're going to go be recording some new stuff coming out. Make sure that you guys check out his YouTube channel. And if I can go and just say 100% thing, go watch the crowdsourcing video that he worked hard on, because it deserves more views than it has. And is there anything else that you want to talk about while we have time and we're sitting here? Is anything that comes to your mind that has not been touched on that you want to talk about?
No, I just want to say, like, massive shout out to all the mob, like Swiss Beatbox, all the event organizers, all the people like connecting the frames. Like, you know, like, it's a very rare thing to have people that you can tell are passionately invested in the furthering of an art form. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people that might come on the side and try and take little chunks from it and then bugger off. So it's nice to see so many different organizations popping up and really like supporting the art form from the ground up. So big ups to all the event organizers, everybody pushing behind the scenes and just giving people like myself, giving people like all the upcoming battlers, upcoming beatboxers, platforms to showcase their art. I think that's a very noble thing to do, and big ups.
You heard it right here. Big ups from Tom to all the people involved. Big ups to the culture of beatbox. And yo, man, thanks for coming on to Beyond the Beats right here, Swiss Beatbox official podcast. I'm happy that you sat down for a couple hours with your old boy Scott Jackson and talked some shop. And yeah, one of these days, you got to come up to Canada, or maybe I'll try to find my way down to Australia when relative normalcy comes back. And maybe I'll meet Greggy. You never know.
Yeah, for sure. She'll be kicking.
All right, brother. Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, you just tuned in. Episode 4, Beyond the Beats, official SBX podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Live stream to Swiss Beatbox YouTube. I'm with the big homie from down under, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Thum. Told us about his life philosophies. Once again, Tom Thum from down under. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been Beyond the Beats. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you next time. Tom, much love, brother.
Yeah. Catch you later, Rob. Peace.